Chapter 321, Witch's Heart, 1. I don't care about people. Not really. Not truly. Why would I? From the moment I first drew breath, the entire world revolved around me. I was Cecilia Slatemark, the princess, the jewel, of the greatest empire humanity had ever seen. I wasn't raised, I was worshipped. Servants whispered my name like a prayer, nobles bowed as if their very bones were crafted to bend before me. Love was unconditional, attention absolute. The imperial palace was my personal playground, crystalline spires that pierced the clouds, gardens engineered to bloom only in my presence, fountains that danced to the rhythm of my footsteps. Even the air seemed to shimmer with deference when I passed through it, as if the very elements recognized their better. Every corridor, every chamber, every courtyard was designed to reflect my glory back at me from 1,000 gleaming surfaces. It spoils you, being handed the world before you even ask for it. When I was young, my brother made the foolish mistake of trying to take one of my toys, a small mechanical nightingale crafted by the finest artificers of the Western continent, its feathers woven from gold and sapphire threads that caught the light like liquid sunshine. I didn't scream, cry, or throw a tantrum, I simply broke him. Even then, I knew precisely how much was too much. I knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain without leaving evidence. And I enjoyed every moment of teaching him that lesson, watching his eyes widen with the realization that his little sister was not just spoiled but dangerous. After all, why should the brightest star share its sky? Years passed, and my family sent me to the famed Tower of Magic, supposedly to learn humility alongside power, though I suspect father simply wanted me somewhere I could cause less political damage. The tower loomed over the landscape like a silver needle piercing the heavens, its 57 floors each dedicated to increasingly complex magical disciplines. Here, ambition ran fierce and competition was merciless. Students from noble families across all continents fought for recognition, for advancement, for the smallest crumb of approval from the masters. They called it the pinnacle, a place to humble even the strongest egos. But they hadn't met me yet. I arrived without fanfare, father's one concession to the tower's traditions of meritocracy. The entrance examination was designed to test not just magical aptitude but creativity, emotional resilience, and ethical boundaries. Most applicants spent months preparing. I completed it in 17 minutes. Leaving the examiners pale-faced and whispering behind trembling hands. I shattered every record, surpassed every prodigy who dared to challenge my standing. The simple spells taught to beginners, I executed with theatrical flourishes that left instructors speechless. When the master of the tower herself offered me discipleship, I wasn't surprised. It was inevitable, after all. Like gravity, like sunrise, like the worship in the eyes of all who beheld me. Because I was inevitable. Yet, even standing atop that ivory tower, even as the world continued to place itself obediently beneath my heel, there was someone, who refused to bend to my will. It irritated me, intrigued me, infuriated me, and enthralled me all at once. Arthur Nightingale. I shouldn't care about anybody. I adjusted my skirt, smoothing out the last imperfection. The reflection staring back at me was flawless, powerful, exactly as expected of Cecilia Slatemark. Yet, as I caught my own eyes in the mirror, a soft warmth blossomed in my chest, betraying me completely. A smile curved my lips gently. But my heart still beats for him. Boys were easier than girls. They stumbled so predictably into embarrassment, tripping over their own tongues, faces flushing redder than the imperial banners flying proudly across Avalon. A glance, a faint smile, and they would practically unravel like badly knitted sweaters. It wasn't their fault, of course, not entirely. One had to make allowances, after all, because the game was rigged from the start. I tilted my head slightly, examining myself in the ornate mirror, the surface gleaming with magical precision. And why wouldn't they fall apart in my presence? I was, after all, Cecilia Slatemark, princess of the empire, possessor of power and beauty beyond reason, and wielder of a smile that could melt hearts as easily as it could break them. Everything I wanted, I took. It was as simple as breathing. Desire was my currency, obedience my birthright. People danced on strings woven from my whims, and oh, how delightful it was to watch them perform. Courtiers forced into embarrassing confessions in crowded halls, proud nobles kneeling to serve as chairs at my whim, young men reduced to tearful begging when I casually dismissed their devotion. Why did I do it? Well, because I could. There's a certain sweetness to watching people break, not in cruelty alone, but in the revelation of how easily they give up their pride. The shock, the disbelief, and finally, the acceptance of my control. It was like tasting victory, one small conquest at a time. Each surrender was a feast for my ego, each capitulation a jewel to add to my collection of triumphs. I had a gallery of broken hearts displayed in my mind like trophies, the ambassador's son who composed 300 sonnets before I informed him I found poetry tedious, the duelist who scarred his face to prove his devotion. Only to discover I preferred symmetrical features, the young mage who abandoned his family's traditions to pursue magical disciplines I mentioned finding interesting, only for me to have moved on to new fascinations by the time he mastered them. Then Arthur Nightingale appeared, and I thought he would break just as effortlessly. But something strange happened. Something I didn't anticipate. I found I didn't truly want to break him. I could have, certainly. At least, that's what I told myself at night, whispering comforting lies into my pillow. But truthfully, I found no pleasure in the thought. Every calculated cruelty I imagined unleashing upon him left me oddly cold and empty, a sensation as unfamiliar as it was unwelcome. For the first time, victory seemed hollow if it meant watching that quiet confidence crumble, that intelligent light dim from his eyes. Instead, I found myself wanting to possess him, not to destroy but to contain, to keep, to treasure. I wanted him in a cage, yes, but a golden one, where I could admire him whenever I wished, where his brilliance would shine for me alone. I imagined him as my personal possession, a rare creature whose spirit remained unbroken even as his freedom was compromised. But he wouldn't want that, would he? The very qualities that drew me to him would wither in captivity. Arthur Nightingale was not meant for cages, even ones crafted from the finest materials by the most loving hands. And strangely, I found I cared about what he wanted, another first, another weakness I never expected to harbor. Perhaps it was fate's peculiar sense of humor, placing someone before me who refused to yield easily, someone who stood defiant, a challenge and an intrigue rolled into one frustrating, irresistible package. Maybe even witches, hardened and haughty as we are, have hearts that beat in secret, vulnerable rhythms. And Arthur, annoyingly stubborn, impossibly clever Arthur, somehow held mine in his hands, unknowingly perhaps, or worse yet, knowingly, his grip both gentle and unbreakable. I smiled softly at my reflection, amusement and irritation dancing equally in my crimson eyes. Because even the cruelest witch of Avalon still had a heart, and apparently, it insisted on loving him. I made one final assessment of my appearance, ensuring every detail was perfect. My outfit was chosen with deliberate care, a crimson crop top that left just enough skin exposed to be tantalizing without seeming desperate for attention, perfectly matched to a black skirt with gold thread embroidery that caught the light with every movement. Around my neck, a delicate gold chain held a single ruby pendant that nestled precisely at the hollow of my throat, while diamond earrings cascaded like frozen tears from my lobes. The ensemble walked the line between casual and formal, between inviting and intimidating. Power and allure in perfect balance, a visual representation of everything I was. My golden hair had been arranged in an elegant style that appeared effortless despite requiring 40 minutes of precise work, framing my face in a way that highlighted my most striking features. I wanted Arthur to look at me and see something he couldn't have, and then I wanted to give it to him anyway, on my terms alone. I wanted to mark him as mine in ways visible to the entire academy, to create a claim so obvious that even that insufferable saintess would have to acknowledge it. Mine, I whispered to my reflection, the word both promise and threat. He will be mine. Fully. With that declaration still warm on my lips, I turned from the mirror and glided toward the door. Tonight would be another opportunity to draw him closer, another chance to weave myself more thoroughly into his thoughts. Another step toward possession that wouldn't feel like captivity. After all, the most exquisite cages are the ones the birds don't even recognize as prisons. and I was nothing if not exquisite. Chapter 322, Witch's Heart, 2. I left my room with practiced poise, every step calculated to appear effortless. The dormitory corridor was quiet. Today had been exceptionally dull without him participating in the festival, which was why I didn't bother watching it. Mine. My Arthur. And yet not entirely mine, not in the way I wanted. Not yet. The evening air carried the lingering fragrance of spring blossoms, the academy gardens in full bloom despite the late hour. The pathways illuminated automatically as I walked, responsive to me, one of the small privileges afforded to those of my status. My ruby pendant pulsed gently against my throat with each step, attuned to my heartbeat's subtle acceleration as I approached his dormitory. The pendant had been a gift from my father on my 16th birthday, to protect what's precious, he'd said with unusual sentiment. Of course, he'd meant me, not my heart. The emperor could hardly have anticipated that his carefully crafted daughter, his perfect political asset, would develop such an inconvenient weakness for a boy of no particular lineage. My earrings caught the artificial moonlight as I turned a corner, tiny diamonds cascading like frozen tears from my lobes, each one enchanted with minor protective spells. My crop top, deep crimson to match the pendant, made from fabric so fine it felt like wearing nothing at all, left my midriff deliberately exposed. The skirt, high-waisted and flaring just enough to suggest movement even when still, completed an ensemble carefully chosen to appear casual while being anything but. I reached the floor where Arthur's room was located. Unlike my previous visits, I found myself hesitating before his door. I raised my hand to knock, feeling a strange flutter of uncertainty. This was ridiculous. I was Cecilia Slatemark, Princess of the Slatemark Empire. I didn't hesitate before doors, and I certainly didn't feel this absurd nervousness about seeing someone who was, technically speaking, beneath my station. Yet here I was, knocking, 3 precise taps that somehow managed to convey both authority and invitation. There was a pause, followed by footsteps approaching. The door slid open, revealing Arthur in casual clothes, his hair slightly windswept as if he'd only recently returned to his room. His eyes widened fractionally at the sight of me, a small victory that I cherished despite myself. Cecilia, he acknowledged, stepping back to allow me entry. A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. I was wondering when you'd show up. The casual certainty in his tone sent conflicting ripples of annoyance and pleasure through me. He expected me. Anticipated me. Perhaps even wanted me here. You were at the festival today, I stated, letting the door close behind me as I moved further into his space. My skirt swished against my thighs, the gold threading catching the light. I noted his eyes tracking the movement before returning to my face. Good. I was, he replied, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I thought I might see you there. The matches were quite impressive, particularly the tactical siege event. I moved closer, deliberately trailing my fingers across his desk, disturbing a few items simply because I could. I had more important matters to attend to than watching mediocre students fumble through predictable challenges. I leaned against the edge of his desk, positioning myself directly in his line of sight. I wore this specifically thinking you might visit me instead. His eyes traveled from my face down to my outfit, taking in the crop top that accentuated my figure, the skirt that hit at precisely the right point to elongate my legs, the pendant that drew attention to the hollow of my throat. The appreciation in his gaze was gratifying, even expected, but the amusement that accompanied it was not. It would have been a waste to spend the day waiting for you to appear, he said, moving to stand before me. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell the faint scent of the outdoors and that uniquely Arthur essence that I'd grown embarrassingly addicted to. When I can appreciate the view up close instead. Boring, I pronounced, though we both knew I didn't mean it. I had no interest in watching those tedious preliminaries. Do you know how tiresome it is to observe mediocrity when one could be doing practically anything else? His lips quirked in that almost smile that never failed to fascinate me. Did you miss me, princess? The way he said my title, slightly emphasized, almost teasing, made it clear he saw it as a role I played rather than my essential nature. Miss you? I traced a finger along his jawline, feeling the slight roughness of emerging stubble. I don't miss things, Arthur. I simply decide when I want them in my presence. His hand caught mine, his thumb pressing gently against my pulse point. And you want me in your presence now. I'll fix that part to reflect that it's Cecilia's chance with Arthur, not about an event. It wasn't a question. It should have infuriated me, this presumption. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through my core, a warmth that bloomed outward until I swore he must be able to see it, a visible manifestation of my weakness for him. Tonight is my turn, I said, twisting a strand of golden hair around my finger. I know those other girls have been monopolizing your time this week. I leaned closer, my voice dropping to something honey-sweet and dangerous. But tonight, you're mine alone. This time when he stepped closer, erasing the remaining distance between us, I didn't move away. Instead, I tilted my face up to his, an invitation that was simultaneously a demand. His hands settled at my waist, fingers splaying across the exposed skin between my top and skirt, each point of contact burning like a brand. And what about Rachel? Rose? Serafina, he asked, his voice deceptively casual. They've been asking for my attention too. Possessiveness flared in me, hot and sharp. The mere mention of their names from his lips made something primal rise up inside me, something that wanted to mark and claim and own. Tonight is mine, I stated, the words falling like imperial decree. They can have you another time. Right now, you focus on me alone. Something shifted in his expression then, his usual accommodating demeanor hardening into something more assertive. His grip tightened at my waist, one hand sliding up to cup the back of my neck, fingers threading through my carefully arranged hair. Demanding, aren't you? He murmured, but there was no yielding in his tone. Instead, his thumb traced the line of my jaw, tilting my face up further. Perhaps I should divide my time as I please. My breath caught. This was the Arthur few saw, the one who didn't bend, didn't break, didn't placate. The one who matched my imperial nature with his own quiet strength. You won't, I challenged, though my voice betrayed me with a slight tremor. No, he agreed, his eyes darkening. I won't. But not because you commanded it, princess. His lips brushed against mine, the ghost of a kiss. Because I choose to. That simple declaration, that he would do as I wished but on his terms, not mine, sent a thrill through me that I couldn't have anticipated. This delicate balance of power, of giving and taking, of demanding and yielding, was intoxicating in ways I'd never experienced before. You infuriate me, you know, I said to Arthur as I placed my hand atop his. Do I? He leaned closer, his lips almost but not quite touching mine. Then tell me to stop. I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I eliminated that final sliver of space between us, capturing his mouth with mine in a kiss that was both punishment and reward. His response was immediate, one hand sliding up my back to tangle in my hair, the other remaining at my waist, thumb tracing maddening circles against my bare skin. The earrings I'd so carefully selected chimed softly as my head tilted to deepen the kiss, my body pressing closer as if trying to erase any separation between us. Mine, I thought fiercely as his touch ignited familiar fires beneath my skin. My Arthur. My choice. My weakness. I pulled back just enough to meet his gaze, my breathing embarrassingly uneven. I should lock you away, I murmured, the words escaping before I could censor them. Keep you where only I can find you. Instead of the alarm such a declaration should have evoked, his eyes darkened with something like desire. Would you visit often, in this hypothetical prison? Every day, I promised, trailing my fingers down his chest. Every night. Tempting, he acknowledged, his voice rougher than usual. But we both know you'd grow bored of a caged bird. The hunt is half the pleasure for you, Cecilia. I frowned, not liking how accurately he read me. Perhaps I'm evolving beyond such simple diversions. His laugh was warm against my skin as his lips found my neck, just above where my pendant rested. Is that what I am? A diversion? You know you're more, I admitted, the words painful in their honesty. Why else would I be here, in this thoroughly average room, wearing an outfit that deserves far more appreciative surroundings? His hands slid lower, tracing the curve of my hips through my skirt. Tell me what I am to you. An impossible request. How could I articulate something I barely understood myself? This compulsion, this need, this terrible wonderful weakness that had taken root in my chest where nothing had ever grown before? Mine, I said finally, the single word containing multitudes. You are mine, Arthur Nightingale. His eyes met mine, something complex and beautiful shifting in their depths. And you, princess? What are you? The question staggered me. No one asked Cecilia Slatemark to define herself. No one dared suggest that I might belong to anyone or anything other than my own ambition. And yet. Yours, I whispered, the confession like blood drawn from stone. God help me, but I am yours. Chapter 323, Witch's Heart, 3. Yours, Cecilia whispered. Her voice was soft, but there was steel behind it, steady and stubborn, the kind of voice that expected the world to hush politely when it spoke. God help me, Arthur, but I'm yours. I stared at her then, properly stared. Not the casual, dismissive look of someone who'd seen her face 1,000 times, but the careful gaze of someone truly trying to understand. Cecilia Slatemark. Golden Princess. Daughter of Emperors. One day, the Arch-Witch herself, a name that would have entire continents treading lightly and double-checking their words before speaking. And if fate had had its way, she would belong to Lucifer Windward. That last bit, though? Irrelevant. Fate and I hadn't exactly been on speaking terms lately. I'd already made up my mind to rewrite it completely. Because I wanted Cecilia. And Rachel. And Seraphina. And Rose. Selfish? You bet. Hypocritical? Unquestionably. The universe could look somewhere else for its hero. It wasn't going to find him here, holding an imperial princess close in a quiet dorm room. I reached up slowly and cupped her cheek, feeling warmth against my palm, feeling the small tremble she was desperately trying to hide. Her crimson eyes held mine, daring me to break first. Cecilia Slatemark, I thought with a smile. A princess who had everything. And now she's shaking in my arms. Arthur, Luna spoke softly in my mind, her voice unusually gentle. In my eyes, you're the hero. What? I blinked, taken aback. But Luna didn't say anything else, fading from my thoughts like someone trying not to ruin a perfectly good moment. Fine, I'd ask later. If I remembered. Because at this moment, Cecilia was all I could see. I've fallen for you too, you know, I murmured, softly enough that only she could hear. Funny how honesty worked. Sneaking up on you at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe, exactly the right one. I'd disliked her once, really disliked her. Hard to like a girl who'd used you as her personal plaything, laughing while she twisted your strings. But she changed. She cracked first. Masks dropped, walls crumbled, and beneath all that porcelain confidence was someone vulnerable, someone who actually saw me as more than a simple piece on a chessboard. And despite my mind's stern lectures, my heart had already decided long ago. Honestly, Cecilia, I whispered, drawing her even closer, my arm wrapping around her waist gently, how many times do I have to tell you I love you before you finally believe me? Forever, she murmured, pressing closer. Her voice vibrated softly against my skin. Love me forever. Be mine forever. I will be, I replied firmly, without hesitation. My fingers slid gently through her golden hair, finding comfort in its silk-like texture. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture, more a quiet, steady reassurance. Somehow, it felt perfectly right. But it's not just you, I added softly, carefully. It's the 3 others, too. She stiffened slightly at that, pulling back just enough to look into my eyes. Her expression wasn't angry, though, more thoughtful, as if puzzling over something very complicated, like an advanced spellcasting formula. I know, she said finally. Her voice had a fragile edge, not used to making compromises. I know. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Nothing worthwhile ever is, I reminded her gently. I've chosen you, Cecilia. Not just alongside them, but because of who you are. Because I want you in my life. Her fingers tightened briefly around mine, then relaxed as if she'd finally decided something important. You promise you won't leave me behind, she asked quietly, crimson eyes locked onto mine. That you'll always have a place for me, just as much as them? Always, I promised firmly. You're Cecilia Slatemark. Do you really think you'd let yourself be forgotten? She smiled then, bright and sudden, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. A princess's smile, brilliant and dangerous. You're impossible, Arthur, she said, but it sounded like praise. And yet, I believe you. I always believe you. She drew closer again, leaning up to give me a kiss, a gentle one, careful, yet somehow holding more meaning than all our previous encounters. It was a promise sealed in trust. Finally, she stepped back, smoothing the creases from her skirt as if gathering her scattered composure. I have an event tomorrow morning, she sighed dramatically, already moving towards the door. If I don't get enough rest, I'll blame you. Fair enough, I agreed, smiling. I accept responsibility. She paused at the threshold, glancing back over her shoulder, eyes shimmering faintly. One more kiss, for luck, she asked softly, pretending it wasn't important. Of course, I said, crossing to her swiftly. Our lips met once more, a tender goodbye, a quiet promise. Then she was gone, leaving behind nothing but the lingering warmth of her touch and the faint scent of something sweet and golden. I exhaled, shook loose the clutter of thoughts jangling around my mind, and lifted my hand, palm up. All right, Luna, I said. Let's see you. The air shimmered with a faint ripple of manna, like a heat haze deciding to give up its day job, and obediently gathered into shape. The shape, it turned out, was about 10 centimeters tall, with a head so disproportionately large that it seemed on the verge of tumbling over from its own ambition. Long violet hair spilled down its tiny shoulders, while two enormous golden eyes blinked up at me in a confusion that could generously be called adorable. At last, Luna declared, placing her minuscule hands proudly on her equally miniature hips. I have successfully manifested, albeit not quite in my full glory. I raised an eyebrow at the pint-sized doll girl balanced neatly in my palm. She radiated the kind of earnestness usually reserved for puppies, cartoon mascots, and people trying to sell you dietary supplements. Chibi doll, I observed, tapping her lightly on the forehead with my finger. It felt like poking a marshmallow. Luna staggered dramatically, then steadied herself, glaring up at me with an expression meant to inspire awe and terror. It succeeded mostly at inspiring an urge to pat her gently and offer reassuring snacks. You are addressing a mighty Chelan, Arthur Nightingale, she said imperiously, which, given her voice's squeaky timbre, sounded roughly as intimidating as a very determined hamster. Sorry, I replied, trying, and failing, to keep a straight face. You're just, incredibly adorable right now. Her golden eyes narrowed into dangerous, yet impossibly cute, slits. Adorable? Adorable? Arthur, I am an entity of cosmic wisdom and power, a being whose very existence transcends. Stop laughing this instant. Not laughing, I said, lips twitching heroically. Just, deeply respectful. She crossed her arms indignantly, clearly unconvinced, and let out a tiny, frustrated huff that had all the threatening quality of a disgruntled kitten. According to Luna, this miniature manifestation was all my current strength could manage, now that I'd reached integration rank. She assured me, with rather pointed emphasis, that her true form, vast, majestic, possibly involving some kind of celestial fireworks, would be available once I reached radiant rank. I looked down at her again, unable to resist. So, I asked, do you eat tiny sandwiches or something? Her glare intensified, which just made me grin even wider. Anyway, Luna said, breaking the brief silence, why did you manifest me, Arthur? You said something strange earlier, I replied carefully. About me being a hero. Explain. She tilted her head, enormous golden eyes narrowing slightly as though searching for words that could explain things clearly enough for an especially bright toddler. You remind me of Julius, she began at last. Her tone had turned gentler, a nostalgic timbre creeping in as she said the name of Julius Slatemark, the first emperor. You carry yourself much as he did. You make choices in much the same way. My eyebrows drew together. How, exactly? I asked, skepticism tinting my voice. I doubt Julius would have approved of someone like me. Luna shrugged her tiny shoulders dismissively. Heroes are tricky things, Arthur. Everyone expects a hero to always do what's right. To rescue kittens from trees and help old ladies cross streets safely. Not exactly my area of expertise, I pointed out dryly. I've noticed, she said with exaggerated solemnity. But perhaps that is why you qualify. I leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite myself. You're saying a hero doesn't have to be good? She sighed, shaking her head. Maybe in a perfect world. But this isn't one of those. Trust me, I checked. Her expression softened. A true hero might always choose the righteous path, whatever righteousness actually means, but the world doesn't always reward righteousness with survival. So what, a hero is just someone who survives? I asked skeptically. Seems a low bar to clear. She gave me a long, piercing stare. For a moment, despite her size, the ancient weight behind those golden eyes made me feel like a schoolboy called out by an impossibly wise professor. A hero, Arthur, is someone who ensures the survival of others, Luna explained patiently. Even if the methods used aren't always noble or nice. Even if he himself is selfish and flawed. You are no saint, no shining paladin destined to be celebrated in sermons. But the world doesn't need a saint right now. It needs someone who can keep it spinning just a little longer. I turned her words over slowly, examining them from every angle like a gem whose facets shifted every time you moved it. She wasn't wrong, I wasn't exactly a textbook hero. My hands weren't spotless, and I doubted they ever would be. But maybe that didn't matter as much as everyone thought it should. Why me? I finally asked, voice quieter than I'd intended. Because fate is silent, Arthur, Luna said softly, placing her tiny hand reassuringly on my thumb. Because the threads of destiny no longer lead clearly. You're the one thread left strong enough to hold it all together. The world doesn't need someone perfect. It just needs someone strong enough. She paused, her eyes glowing softly. Isn't that enough to call yourself a hero? Chapter 324, Phantom Fleet Command, 1. The skies above Mythos Academy were a brilliant, cloudless blue. Rows of high-tech bleachers gleamed in the midday sun, arranged in a colossal oval that encircled the largest aquatic stadium on campus. This place was typically used for advanced naval exercises, training sessions for maritime or mech-based courses, but today it was transformed into the grand stage for Phantom Fleet Command, the highlight of the Inter-Academy Festival's preliminary events. The festival brought together 6 different academies, each having sent 10 of their most promising students, for a total of 60 participants. They were all teenagers, mostly ranging from 15 to 19, unified by the single purpose of crushing the competition in a watery battlefield unlike any other. A hush of pre-battle anticipation filled the stands. A few thousand spectators, students, staff, and external visitors, had assembled, wearing color-coded jackets or scarves to show their loyalties, black and crimson for Mythos, white and gold for Slatemark, green for Serpentstone, silver for Pillin, red for Starcrest, and cobalt for Gravehold. On the massive scoreboard suspended above the stadium, an initial listing of the 60 participants scrolled by. It wasn't showing any points yet, those would appear only at the conclusion of the event. Until then, the final ranking would remain a mystery, fueling tension and speculation in equal measure. At the heart of this aquatic arena spread a body of saltwater nearly 400 meters across. Its edges were lined with docking slips for mechanical warships, each about 15 to 20 meters long. These scaled-down but fully equipped vessels were the crux of Phantom Fleet Command: thick, sleek hulls forged from layered alloys to withstand gunfire, mini-torpedoes, and scorching energy blasts. Each competitor in this event commanded a flotilla of 6 ships, a main flagship plus 5 support vessels. The technology behind them was advanced but quite real, as were the stakes. Hits could force a hull breach, sabotage thrusters, or disable a ship entirely. Down at Dock 23, Cecilia stood by the hull of her flagship, the Radiant Sovereign. She was dressed in a sleek uniform that bore the black and crimson emblem of Mythos Academy. She had golden hair pulled into a neat braid, and the refined posture of someone utterly sure of herself. In her calm, crimson eyes flickered the bearing of a leader. She eyed her flotilla with satisfaction: the Radiant Sovereign, a 20-meter warship with dual turret cannons and advanced sensor arrays, plus 2 corvettes for speed, a destroyer with heavier armaments, a support frigate for mid-range shelling, and a specialized scout vessel. Each hull was painted a striking black with gold trim. She was ready to prove that even on water, she was unstoppable. On the other side of the same stadium, near Dock 7, Ian adjusted the gloves of his black uniform. Red hair, golden eyes, and the poised confidence of someone who had faced down monstrous foes. Like Cecilia, he had 5 additional vessels: corvettes, a destroyer, a frigate, and a lighter cruiser. The black and crimson color scheme on them echoed Mythos Academy's official palette, with subtle draconic motifs adorning the hulls, a quiet nod to the rumored draconic blood in his veins. Though the festival was brimming with other top talents, Talia Moore from Gravehold, Gareth Flynn from Serpentstone, Naomi Shea from Starcrest, and others, everyone in the stand suspected that the day's real highlight would be the confrontation between these 2 unstoppable Mythos students. Some watchers placed bets on which corner of the watery stadium they would meet in, who would gain the upper hand, whether either might be dethroned by an underdog. The scoreboard still displayed all 60 names, but none had overshadowed the rumor that 2 white-ranked teenage powerhouses from the same academy might soon clash. At precisely midday, a jingle rang out, hushed the crowd, and directed everyone's attention to the center of the basin. A calm, amplified voice, smooth and measured, began the official introduction. Welcome, esteemed students and visitors, to the Inter-Academy Festival's Phantom Fleet Command. Each of our 6 academies, Mythos, Slatemark, Serpentstone, Pillon, Starcrest, and Gravehold, has sent 10 participants to test their skills in advanced naval warfare. This is no simulation. These are real mechanical vessels, scaled down, but armed with genuine ordnance. Participants, you have your assigned flotillas. Control them wisely, outmaneuver your foes, seize resource buoys for additional points, and remember, only your synergy and cunning can ensure victory. You may sink or be sunk, but the scoreboard will reveal the champion at the end. Applause rolled around the stands. The voice paused, then resumed more briskly: Participants, you have 5 minutes to board your vessels, finalize your squads, and prepare for deployment. Once the signal sounds, the gates to the central waters will open, and the Phantom Fleet Command will commence. May the best academy triumph. A surge of motion followed. Students boarded their designated ships. Each competitor had a small team of 3 or 4 classmates or staff who would handle specialized tasks like scanning, engine tuning, or gunnery, but final decisions belonged to the competitor. Both Cecilia and Ian found themselves in the same boat, figuratively speaking, giving last-minute orders to their own crews. Cecilia stepped onto the Radiant Sovereign's main deck, her boots tapping the polished metal. She inhaled deeply, enjoying the salty tang of the water. With a purposeful stride, she reached the helm, a compact console bristling with screens and controls. She typed a few commands, verifying reactor output, turret alignment, and communications with her corvettes and support ships. The other 5 vessels floated in symmetrical formation just beyond, each manned by Mythos students in black uniforms with the Academy crest. If she felt any nerves, it didn't show on her face. She'd spent half her life dominating in every competition or test thrown her way. This would be no different. Across the water, Ian took a calmer approach, leaning against the Draconis Spear's starboard rail, scanning the rest of the participants fanning out around the edges of the watery stadium. He recognized Talia Moore's ships off to the left, their hulls fitted with stealth plating that might hamper targeting. On the right, Gareth Flynn's imposing line of heavier warships flew the serpentine crest of Serpentstone. In the southwestern corner, he spotted a cluster of slate-marked ships, ironically carrying an emblem identical to the crest of Cecilia's family. He felt a flicker of curiosity. Had they come to avenge old grudges or prove some imperial lineage nonsense? He wasn't sure, and it didn't matter. Right now, he only focused on forging a path to enough kills, and eventually a confrontation with the unstoppable golden-haired girl from his own academy. The overhead voice came once more. 1 minute to start. All participants, please stand by. Silence, except for the faint hum of engines, the soft lapping of water against steel hulls. The hush of thousands of watchers bracing for a show. Then, with an electric buzz, the main gates parted, allowing the docked ships to slip out into the central basin. The event began. Chapter 325, Phantom Fleet Command, 2. Some participants rushed forward to claim resource buoys scattered around the arena. These bright orange floats sat anchored to the basin floor, awarding additional points to whoever maintained proximity for a set period. Others tested the waters, sending smaller ships out in picket lines to scout. Talia Moore's Gravehold flotilla swiftly vanished behind a swirl of cloaking technology. Gareth Flynn's Serpentstone heavies rumbled out in a block formation, seemingly unstoppable. Starcrest's representatives advanced in pairs. Pillon's novices hung back, hoping to avoid an early exit. Meanwhile, Slate Mark Academy's kids boasted gold-liveried warships but hadn't all left the docking area yet, presumably perfecting last-minute calibrations. Cecilia wasted no time. She directed her corvettes to snag a resource buoy near the eastern quadrant. That done, she guided the Radiant Sovereign and its immediate escorts in a northern sweep, scanning for potential easy kills. She wanted to build points quickly, ensuring she had a comfortable lead by the time she faced heavier opposition. With crisp efficiency, she hammered a small grouping from Pillon, forcing 2 corvettes to retreat in smoke. She gleaned some initial kills. On the scoreboard, hidden from her view, but shown to the audience, Cecilia's name soared. The watchers roared in excitement, seeing Slate Mark's unstoppable star gather momentum. Ian, on the southwestern side, advanced at a measured pace. His Draconis spear formed the apex of a wedge with the destroyer and frigate at the center, and corvettes on each side. He captured 1 resource buoy unchallenged. Then he spied an opening. Talia Moore's stealth ships, believed dangerous, had ventured too close. In a swift engagement, he pinned them down, saturating the area with crossfire. Talia's stealth advantage wasn't enough to hide from multiple angles. The scoreboard displayed that 2 Gravehold vessels were crippled. Chatter in the stands soared. Ian had pulled ahead with kills. All around, smaller fights erupted. Some novices from Pillon or Starcrest collided with each other in chaotic brawls. The watery surface soon littered with drifting metal, some vessels half-submerged, others fully scuttled. The crowd cheered or groaned each time a major participant scored a kill. The scoreboard, though not visible to the students, flickered constantly for watchers, awarding points for each success. Midway through the event's allocated time, it became obvious that the 2 unstoppable presences from Mythos overshadowed the rest. The bigger question was if they'd meet directly. Talia Moore from Gravehold was limping after repeated hits. Gareth Flynn from Serpentstone had some success but was stuck in a drawn-out siege with a Slate Mark group. Another cluster from Starcrest scuffled with novices near the center. Meanwhile, both Cecilia and Ian seemed unstoppable, each systematically carving out sections of the battlefield, taking resource buoys, and stacking hidden points. Finally, it happened. Near the center-south area of the basin, 2 advanced warship groups spotted each other at about 600 meters apart. Onlookers realized instantly who they belonged to, the black and gold Radiant Sovereign +5 support craft on one side, and the black and crimson Draconis spear +5 on the other. The roars from the stands became deafening, cameras swiveling to capture every angle. If there had been illusions or magic, this would be the moment for a dramatic swirl. But in this futuristic setting, all that existed was the cold steel of mechanical ships and the steadfast determination of two unstoppable captains. Cecilia took the initiative. She fired a volley from her destroyer, shells whistling over the water. One near miss soaked a corvette from Ian's side. Another shell hammered the side of a smaller support ship, forcing it to break formation. She followed up with a flanking run from her frigate, launching a barrage that battered Ian's corvette. The watchers hollered, seeing that unstoppable aggression in action. But Ian responded quickly, ordering the Draconis spear to deliver a punishing broadside into one of Cecilia's corvettes. The corvette reeled from multiple blasts, half its compartments locked by flooding. Thus began a swirling, chaotic engagement. Each side's corvettes darted around, searching for vantage points or angles to launch torpedoes. The heavier ships, Cecilia's destroyer, Ian's frigate, or vice versa, unleashed repeated shellfire that churned the water in frothy eruptions. Some novices in the area fled, not wishing to be collateral damage in the unstoppable pair's fight. Talia Moore, limping away from earlier losses, retreated entirely rather than face them. Gareth Flynn remained pinned by Slatemark's other group. And so the southwestern center zone became a private stage for a duel that overshadowed the entire competition. Cecilia pivoted the Radiant Sovereign, main turrets rotating to aim at the Draconis spear's port side. She hissed instructions into a comm, ensuring her destroyer hammered Ian's frigate while her corvettes harassed the Draconis spear's starboard. But Ian saw an opening. His corvettes feigned a retreat, luring one of Cecilia's corvettes out of position. Then the Draconis spear fired a potent salvo that slammed the overextended corvette's hull. Water flooded in. Metal twisted. The corvette sank within moments, awarding a huge chunk of points to Ian behind the scenes. The watchers screamed in delight at the sight of a major hit. But the scoreboard was hidden from the two participants, so neither knew exactly who led. For her part, Cecilia pressed on with unwavering focus, ignoring the loss as a necessary trade. She hammered Ian's destroyer with combined shellfire from the Radiant Sovereign and her frigate. The destroyer soon belched smoke, forced to power down. Another kill for her, presumably. The water's surface around them littered with drifting debris. Time ticked down. They'd both lost multiple ships, battered each other relentlessly, but neither flagship was sunk. The Radiant Sovereign's prow was badly dented, half a turret jammed. The Draconis spear's starboard was shredded, deck fires raging. In the stands, the audience stood on their feet, some yanking at their hair or biting their nails as the unstoppable duo rained destruction on each other. Finally, in a last furious exchange, both flagships soared dangerously close. Cecilia unleashed a savage point-blank volley that ripped into the Draconis spear's engine compartments, sending sparks flying. The muzzle flash from her cannons lit the watery battlefield in harsh brilliance. Ian reeled at the blow but returned fire, letting off a final broadside that pummeled the Radiant Sovereign's mid-deck, smashing part of the superstructure. The watchers collectively sucked in breath, expecting one or both ships to sink. But the event timer beeped across the stadium, signifying the end. A hush descended. All weapons ceased fire. Drifting in the battered southwestern center were two half-ruined warships, battered beyond recognition yet unbelievably afloat, the Radiant Sovereign and the Draconis spear. A moment of stunned silence lingered before the stands erupted in cheers that threatened to tear the roof off. Fireworks shot into the sky, painting the daylight with bursts of color. At last, the scoreboard was allowed to show final results. The giant screen overhead displayed 1. Cecilia Slatemark. 2. Ian Vizirian. 3. Talia Moore. 4. Gareth Flynn. 5. Naomi Shea. The crowd roared at the sight, some clapping in triumph, others lamenting that Ian came so close. Students across the stands chanted "Mythos" in deafening unison, proud that their top two overshadowed the entire field. On the southwestern water, the battered Radiant Sovereign signaled for assistance to tow it back, while the Draconis spear did the same. Both teenage captains had proven unstoppable forces, and though Ian had lost by a narrow margin, he'd left a mark on Cecilia's unstoppable aura. Even as paramedics and staff hurried to ensure the participants were safe, the scoreboard froze in that final arrangement. The day's victor, the golden-haired, crimson-eyed white ranker from Mythos Academy, unstoppable in her pursuit of first place. The runner-up, the red-haired, golden-eyed boy who nearly tore her plan to shreds. Around them, the lesser participants quietly returned to the docks or signaled rescue craft. Talia Moore, satisfied with third, limped off with her stealth ships half ruined. Gareth Flynn from Serpentstone found a slight grin in being fourth, overshadowed by bigger fish. Naomi Shea from Starcrest took fifth with a half-smile. The rest, 55 names, were scattered across the lower ranks. And so Phantom Fleet Command came to a close at Mythos Academy, ending with the scoreboard blazing that final outcome for all to see. Chapter 326, Ascension Tower Challenge, 1. They stood at the foot of the Ascension Tower, 60 strong, each brimming with mana and courage. A hush settled among the onlookers gathered outside the tower's ancient gates. Beyond those gates lay captured beasts, all of them 5-star or 6-star threats, each waiting inside twisting corridors and hidden alcoves. One by one, the challengers gripped their weapons or flexed their magic, preparing for the trials ahead. A raised platform served as the gathering point. On it, an official in flowing black robes recited the rules. The Ascension Tower was divided into numerous floors. Each floor held captured beasts, rampaging tigers with elemental fangs, serpents that spat poison, giant apes with iron hides, all rated 5-star or 6-star by the Empire's best tamers. The deeper one ventured, the more lethal the creatures. Victory required cunning, synergy, raw power. Everyone had 4 hours to climb as high as possible, gather special tokens dropped by vanquished beasts, and exit before the tower sealed. For among the crowd drew the most attention. They showed no sign of fear, only calm or fierce resolve. When the final bell rang, they moved with confidence through the gates. Voices in the crowd murmured names in hushed excitement: Seraphina Zenith, Jack Blaze Spout, Siola Moyong, Ava Peng. Each carried a different flame of ambition. They didn't walk together. Each stepped through the tall arch, flanked by lesser challengers from the same academy or from other alliances. The first floor stretched wide with dark stone walls lit by torches. Wind crept through unseen cracks, stirring the stale air. Somewhere in the distance, a roar echoed, then died away. The participants split into smaller groups or ventured alone, each scanning the corridor's gloom for the slightest motion. A faint screech tore the silence. Instantly, torchlight caught the glint of long fangs and glistening fur. A 5-star beast, an obsidian-furred wolf the size of a bear, lunged from a side passage at a trio of novices. Blood spattered the floor within seconds, though protective wards saved them from true fatality. Dozens of watchers outside the tower gasped or shut their eyes, imagining how easily one slip spelled doom. Seraphina Zenith reached that spot moments later. Her breath caught at the carnage. She drew in a slow lungful of air, letting cold energy surge through her limbs. Her affinity with wind, ice, and water lent a chill to her immediate surroundings. When a second wolf crashed in from behind, she whirled, calling upon the first movement of her grade 6 art, Violet Divine Mist. Frosty swirls of wind whipped outward, tinted a soft purple hue that shimmered in the torchlight. The wolf froze mid-lunge, icicles forming around its muzzle. It snapped and tried to break free, but her gift, the ice crystal jade body, amplified every icy wave. It stumbled, encased in a shell of rime. With a faint, haunted look in her eyes, Seraphina flicked her wrist. The wolf shattered, leaving behind a battered token glinting on the stone. She picked it up, the crystal edges reflecting violet light, and pressed on. Her steps were quiet, her posture straight. Ice flaked away from her fingertips, drifting like tiny snowflakes. The watchers outside, seeing glimpses through scrying orbs, marveled at her elegance, whispering that a white ranker had seldom looked so calm against a 5-star beast. Meanwhile, deeper in another corridor, a swirl of flames lit the darkness. Jack Blaze Spout strode alone, integration rank aura throbbing around him. Nirvana flames coated his hands and shoulders like living fire, but it didn't scorch his own flesh. A 6-star scorpion beast, covered in jagged plating, scuttled from the gloom. Its tail dripped venom that sizzled on contact with the stone floor. Jack let the corners of his mouth curl into a smirk. He stretched out one hand, palm forward, and unleashed a sudden torrent of azure fire. The scorpion shrieked. Venom boiled off, plating melted, and within seconds, it collapsed in a smoking husk. The watchers outside trembled, seeing how unstoppable an integration rancor with Nirvana flames could be. Jack knelt, rummaging in the remains until he seized a half-burnt token. He pocketed it, ignoring the acrid scent of roasted shell. Then he moved on without comment, flames fading from his hands. He had floors to climb, no time to waste with watchers or gloating. He used no incantations, no elaborate technique. Just raw gift power that overshadowed lesser spells. A few halls away, Seola Moyong, second stage of integration, advanced with her sword sheathed, her posture almost casual. The corridor around her rumbled as a towering 6-star ape beast slammed its fists into the walls, trying to corner her. She exhaled, letting her aura intensify. Earth and wind coalesced under her feet, water and lightning crackled in her veins, space magic flickered around her edges. She was said to have 5 elemental affinities, and her grade 5 art, Skyward Lotus, soared across them gracefully. The ape roared. She touched the hilt of her sword. The first petal of Skyward Lotus manifested as a swirl of wind that elevated her stance in a near weightless dash. She glided behind the ape in a single breath. The second petal, Blossom and Storm, unleashed a surge of swirling water-laced wind, combined with crackling lightning sparks. The ape howled, battered on all sides, bits of fur singed or soaked. Then she pivoted into the third petal, Divine Gale, releasing a fierce gust that slammed the beast overhead. It crashed onto the stone, cracks forming under the impact. The watchers outside gasped in admiration. Seola retrieved a glimmering token from the beast's remains, a calm settling over her face. Her gift, the heavenly sword soul body, shimmered in the faint lines of space about her limbs, making each motion fluid, unstoppable. She sheathed her sword and continued. A second wave of watchers erupted in cheers, seeing her synergy with multiple elements. She was overshadowing many white rankers in advanced synergy. Ava Peng, the last of the 4 to show her might, was cornered by a monstrous boar with thick, armor-like hide, 5-star if not approaching 6. She clenched her fists, letting her gift surge. Her entire body thrummed with aura shaped by her triple affinity, fire, earth, gravity. She lunged, slamming her knuckles into the boar's flank. Earth pulses rippled, fracturing its bony plating. The boar squealed, lashing out with massive tusks, but she harnessed gravity to yank it downward mid-charge. Then she ignited her fists with flames, pounding the boar's skull in a flurry of unstoppable strikes. The watchers glimpsed her determination, as unstoppable as any white rank fist user could be. When it fell, she snagged the token, panting but determined to press on. That was only the first floor, or possibly the second, for these unstoppable 4. The watchers outside marveled at how quickly they progressed, overshadowing novices who got pinned or lost. Each floor, the beasts grew fiercer, their roars echoing through passageways that twisted and turned. Some beasts lurked in hidden dens, some guarded corridors or token caches, while others prowled aimlessly, attacking anyone who ventured close. Chapter 327, Ascension Tower Challenge, 2. Jack moved like a solitary inferno. A 6-star thunder drake pinned a group of Starcrest novices, threatening to devour them. Jack strolled in, eyes half-lidded. The novices shouted for help, but he paid them no mind. He unleashed Nirvana flames in a single wave that seared the drake's scaly hide to ash. It collapsed, leaving behind a shimmering token. The novices gawked. Jack merely plucked the token from the beast's remains, offered no words of comfort, and continued forward. The watchers gasped at the near lack of empathy. He was unstoppable, caring only for first place. Seola discovered a hidden chamber brimming with captive serpents, 5-star beasts coiled in a pit of swirling mud. She frowned, sliding her sword halfway out of its sheath. The serpents hissed in unison, spitting globs of caustic poison at her. She parted them with a single motion, conjuring a swirl of wind-laced water to wash the poison aside. Then she invoked Blossom and Storm, arcs of lightning dancing along her blade, striking multiple serpents at once. Her synergy overshadowed them easily. She snatched the tokens from their sputtering forms, all in near silence, then advanced to the next corridor. Observers outside admired her methodical approach and unstoppable calm. Ava faced a pair of twin saber-tooth cats near an upper stairwell. She ducked a slash that might have disemboweled lesser fighters, responding with a gravity-laced elbow that caved in the first cat's shoulder. The second cat leaped from behind, but she pivoted, igniting a circle of flame around her fists. The cat yelped as its fur caught fire. Then Ava followed with earthen fists, unstoppable in their directness, hammering it into submission. She retrieved the tokens, exhaling. She realized she was overshadowed in pure speed by Seola or in raw destructive power by Jack, but she refused to let that slow her. She would keep punching her way upward. Seraphina found an entire nest of 6-star frost dragons ironically perched in a subchamber layered with ice spikes. A synergy of wind, water, and her jade body meant she could combat them on near equal terms. They roared, unleashing shards of ice breath, but she responded with her second movement, Fan of the Scattering Pearls, forming swirling pearls of half-frozen mist that battered the dragons out of the sky. Her expression was pained, though. She wasn't unstoppable in the same sense as Jack or Seola, but her white rank power soared with each precise usage of her grade 6 art. When she froze the last frost dragon, it tumbled to the ground, and she grabbed the token amid crackling shards. She pressed on, a swirl of violet frost trailing from her ankles. Jack soon reached near the top, the second-to-last floor. A 7-headed hydra, obviously a 6-star monstrous creation, guarded the stairway. The watchers collectively held their breath. He simply advanced, letting his nirvana flames burn bright. Each head spat acid or lightning or raw mana blasts, but he shredded them with swirling azure flame. One by one, the heads fell. He marched on, unstoppable, not even glancing at the lesser challengers cowering behind pillars. They were overshadowed by his integration aura, choking on the thick heat of his gift. Seola arrived next. She found the Hydra's battered remains still faintly twitching, lacking some tokens because Jack had presumably taken them. She frowned but pressed on. She discovered a hidden side door, slicing through a cluster of giant hawks that nested there. Their feathers crackled with electric arcs, a savage 6-star breed, but her synergy overcame them. She claimed more tokens from the nest, each shimmering with primal mana. Seraphina, panting from repeated fights, had to freeze a raging 6-star minotaur that clutched a massive iron axe. She nearly took a blow that might have gutted her, but her jade body synergy manifested in a swirling shield of ice, letting her redirect the blow. Then she struck with Violet Sunset Genesis, conjuring mist that seeped into the minotaur's lungs, crystallizing it from within. It roared, collapsed, and dissolved. She felt near her limit but continued, eyes burning with quiet determination. She refused to let fatigue overshadow her. Ava arrived behind them, battered but not broken. She forcefully suplexed a 6-star thunder boar that tried to gore her, using gravity pulses to hold it in place, then hammered it with earthen fists. Blood trickled from a shallow cut in her side. She hissed, but unstoppable stubbornness drove her onward. Observers outside cheered. Even if she might end up overshadowed by the higher-tier synergy of others, her fists refused to quit. Finally, each found themselves climbing to the top floor, or so they believed. The watchers outside saw 4 scry images converge on a giant, circular chamber open to the sky. A swirling miasma poured from runic circles in the floor, containing a caged 6-star beast known as the Shadow Chimera, rumored to combine multiple elemental traits. In the center of that chamber, it roared at the approach of each unstoppable contender. Jack arrived first. He didn't wait for others. He flung out nirvana flames in a blazing arc, scorching half the Chimera's flank. The watchers gasped, certain it overshadowed typical 6-star beasts. The chimera hissed, lashing out with a tail shaped like a serpent's head spitting acid. Jack sidestepped, letting a small wave of flame incinerate the acid spray midair. Seola arrived mid-fight. She saw an opening while Jack hammered the chimera from one side. She lunged in from behind, swirling her sword with wind-laced lightning. The watchers outside recognized the third petal, Divine Gale, conjuring a vortex that slashed the chimera's hind legs. It shrieked, stumbling. She advanced, unyielding. Seraphina emerged next. Her eyes widened at the half-collapsed chimera raging in the center. She summoned her swirling pearls of frost, unleashing them in a wide arc that battered the beast's front legs, already wounded by Jack's flame. Ava arrived last, fists crackling with flame or earth pulses. She hammered the chimera's midsection in a savage flurry. The watchers roared at the chaotic synergy, or lack thereof, as each tried to deal the finishing blow and grab the final tokens. Some minor challengers skulked near the edges, overshadowed by the swirling elemental chaos. The chimera bellowed, thrashing in defiance. It spat lightning from a serpentine tail, breathed scorching wind from a lion's maw, slammed the ground with heavy paws. The tower's wards flickered from the havoc. Each unstoppable fighter took hits, battered or singed, but none buckled. Jack unleashed a final wave of nirvana flames, charring a flank. Seola parted the blazing hide with a slicing wind-laced sword slash. Seraphina hammered its flank with a winter gale, freezing a layer of flesh. Ava pounded the head from below with earthen fists that cracked bone. The watchers outside exploded in cheers. The shadow chimera roared its final protest, collapsing in a swirling pool of black ichor. A massive token, glowing with primal energy, emerged from its remains. All four lunged for it. In that swirl, Jack's flame overshadowed them, forcing them back slightly. He snatched the main token, letting smaller splinters scatter. Seola claimed a chunk, Seraphina a chunk, Ava a chunk. The unstoppable tension soared. But time was up. The wards crackled, signifying the challenge is close. All participants found themselves forcibly teleported to the tower's base. A hush. The watchers outside craned their necks, scanning for who might appear battered or triumphant. 60 challengers reappeared in bursts of colored mana, most groaning or panting on the courtyard's cracked tiles. Then, after a moment, the scoreboard soared above them, listing final results in shimmering text. 1. Jack Blaze Spout. 2. Seola Moyong. 3. Seraphina Zenith. 4. Ava Peng. The watchers roared. Applause crashed like thunder. Each name glowed for an instant, overshadowing the rest. Chapter 328, Ice Princess's Heart, 1. So it's your turn now? I asked Seraphina as she simply nodded. She was wearing a simple white t-shirt and ripped black jeans that fit her frame well. Her silver hair reflected the sunlight like a waterfall of molten silver and her ice blue eyes shone like condensed orbs of snowflakes. She seemed to have changed after the event. The four of us played a game to decide the order, she said shamelessly as she stepped forward. The two of us were alone in my room as the events for the day were over. Through the half-open window, the evening breeze carried the faint scent of night flowers blooming in the academy gardens. The soft glow of enchanted lanterns cast long shadows across the floor, shrouding the corners in comfortable darkness. Then, come here, I said as I got up and grabbed her. I saw her elven ears turn red as I looked down at her. My eyes focused on her red lips before slipping below, then going back to her red lips. Pervert, she whispered as I leaned in to kiss her. And you aren't one? I said as we both separated from each other after a deep kiss. For you, she said shamelessly as we kissed some more. Her fingers threaded through my hair, pulling me closer. I could taste the sweetness of her lips, the slight hint of the berry wine we'd shared earlier. My hands found her waist, then slowly slid up her back, tracing the contours of her body as if memorizing every curve. The silken texture of her hair fell around us like a curtain, catching the fading light in strands of liquid silver. Arthur, she breathed against my mouth, her voice half sigh, half plea. I responded by deepening the kiss, feeling her body arch against mine. The world narrowed to just this: her taste, her scent, the softness of her skin beneath my fingertips. Time seemed to stretch and compress all at once. The distant sounds of the academy faded away, leaving only our synchronized heartbeats and shared breaths. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, her eyes were darker, that ice blue now stormy with desire. I traced the line of her jaw with my thumb, watched as she leaned into the touch like a cat seeking affection. The subtle shift in her expression, vulnerability beneath her usual composure, sent a rush of protectiveness through me. "When is your birthday?" she asked suddenly, her voice still husky but her eyes sharpening with curiosity. I just smiled, saying nothing, my fingers still tracing patterns on her skin. The question hung between us, unexpected and unwelcome, like a shadow falling across a sunlit room. Her brows furrowed, the perfect arch of them drawing together in confusion. "Why won't you answer me?" The playfulness in her tone had hardened into something more serious, more determined. I shrugged, trying to pull her close again, but she placed a hand against my chest, keeping a small distance between us. Her palm was warm, but firm, unyielding. "This reminds me of the ruined island," she said, her voice quieter now. "In the Northern Sea Ice Palace. That 6-star dungeon." Her gaze was steady, searching, as if trying to read a text written in invisible ink across my face. My smile faltered slightly, but I kept it in place through sheer force of will. Memories flickered behind my eyes: frost-covered ruins, crystalline corridors, and the chamber where ancient magic had reached into my mind and pulled out nightmares dressed as truth. "You were crying after the mental trial," she continued, her eyes never leaving mine. "You wouldn't tell me why, even though I held you." Her voice softened at the edges, not accusing but reminiscing, as if the memory of comforting me was one she treasured despite its pain. My throat tightened at the memory, the trial, the visions, the past laid bare before me in all its ugly truth. And Serafina afterward, not asking questions, just holding me together when I felt like I might shatter into 1,000 pieces. The weight of her arms around me had been the only anchor in a sea of despair. "Is that related to your birthday too?" she asked, her voice gentle but persistent. The question probed at wounds long scabbed over but never truly healed. Her hand moved from my chest to my face, cupping my cheek. The touch was tender, almost reverent, and I found myself leaning into it despite the memories churning inside me. Her thumb brushed away a tension I hadn't realized was visible. "You don't have to tell me everything," she whispered, tracing my lower lip with her thumb. "But I want to know you, Arthur. All of you. Even the parts you think are too dark to share." The earnestness in her eyes was almost painful to witness. This princess who had fought dragons and demons was now fighting to understand me. "Ignore it," I murmured, slipping my hand beneath her t-shirt, my fingers brushing against the taut, warm skin of her abdomen. Her breath caught, a sharp little hitch that sent a thrill through me. "It doesn't matter. The past is dead and gone." The words tasted like lies, but I'd spoken them so many times they almost felt true. Serafina opened her mouth to argue, but I captured her hand, weaving my fingers through hers, and silenced her with another deep, hungry kiss. My lips roamed, her soft mouth, her flushed cheeks, the delicate curve of her perfect nose, drinking in the sight of the half-elf princess pinned beneath me, her beauty almost unreal. A faint glow emanated from her skin, an ethereal light that seemed to pulse with her quickening heartbeat. "Arthur," she breathed, her voice trembling despite its usual steadiness, her face glowing with heat as she pressed a hand to my chest. "Why are you dodging this?" There was hurt beneath the question, a subtle wound inflicted by my silence. "Because I want to," I said simply, lifting her hand from my chest and lacing my fingers with hers once more, trapping her gently. The shadows in the room had lengthened, casting half her face in darkness while the other half remained illuminated by the dying light. "Arthur," she tried again, but I kissed her harder, tasting her, feeling the weight of her body beneath mine. My hands slid to the back of her head, cradling her, guiding her as our tongues tangled in a slow, intoxicating dance. The scent of her, winter frost and summer flowers, impossibly combined, filled my senses. You'd go this far to avoid it? Serafina's voice was a whisper now, her eyes searching mine. Somewhere in their depths, understanding began to dawn, not of what I was hiding, but of how desperately I needed to hide it. I'm not avoiding it, I countered, my tone firm as I held her gaze. I just don't care about it anymore. Even to my own ears, the defiance sounded hollow. I beg to differ, she said, her voice a soft challenge. If this isn't a void, her words faltered as I kissed her again, cutting her off with the press of my lips. She didn't truly fight me, though her mouth moved as if to speak. Instead, her body softened beneath mine, yielding as I deepened the kiss. Her tongue met mine, tentative but eager, fumbling in a way that was entirely her own. The contrast between the fierce warrior who had stood back to back with me against hordes of frost wraiths and this hesitant, gentle creature in my arms never ceased to fascinate me. She wasn't like the others, Cecilia, Rachel, or Rose. Cecilia wielded precision like a weapon, Rachel burned with wild enthusiasm, and Rose flowed in perfect sync with me. Serafina was different, calmer, laced with a quiet hesitation, as though some hidden fear held her back. Yet she didn't pull away. Her quickening breaths, the subtle shift of her body beneath me, and the flush creeping over her face told me everything. She wanted this as much as I did. The light filtering through the window had shifted, painting her silver hair with hues of gold and amber. I traced one finger along the edge of her pointed ear, watching as she shivered at the touch. Arthur, she gasped when we finally parted, both of us breathless. Her arms had slipped beneath mine, her hands finding my shoulders, clinging there as if to anchor herself. Her tongue darted out, tracing her lips, and those steady ice-blue eyes flickered with uncertainty. Her voice, usually smooth and firm, like silk spun tight, trembled now, woven through with the raw emotions spilling out of her. The confident princess of the eastern continent had dissolved, leaving only Serafina, vulnerable and wanting. I can feel your heartbeat, I whispered, my fingers brushing her chest as her pale cheeks flared a deeper red, brighter than I'd ever seen. The rapid flutter beneath my touch matched the tempo of my own racing pulse. I can feel yours, she murmured back, her voice barely audible, a fragile thread between us. Her hand reached up, palm flat against my chest, feeling the rhythm that had accelerated at her touch. A moment of understanding passed between us, wordless but profound. She would not press further today, but this wasn't surrender. It was a tactical retreat. Serafina, master strategist that she was, knew when to wait for a better opening. I don't want to go further, I said, steady but gentle. The words carried more meaning than their surface, not just about our physical intimacy, but about the questions she'd been asking, the walls she'd been trying to scale. I know, she replied with a small nod, though a fleeting shadow of disappointment crossed her face. If you did, we'd already be there. Don't worry. My heart, it only beats like this for you. Chapter 329, Ice Princess's Heart, 2. What does it mean to love someone? I never knew before him. Growing up in the Mount Hua sect, I only felt safe with a handful of masters, kind people with weathered faces and quiet voices, who'd sit with my mother under the cherry blossoms when she was still alive. Their eyes crinkled when they smiled at me, a small girl trailing after her mother's shadow. They were the only ones I didn't push away. My father? He was a ghost in his own life. After Mom died, he locked himself in his training chambers, obsessed with surpassing the martial king. The sect leader's duties piled up like dust on the shelves, ignored. He didn't see me, didn't care to. My adopted brother was worse. His glares cut deeper than any blade, his jealousy a living thing that coiled around us. He hated the blood in my veins, the legacy I carried without asking for it. He wanted to be me, to take my place. I was alone in that cold, sprawling sect, surrounded by stone walls and silence. So I stopped caring. I had to. I built a shell around myself, hard and icy, like the frost that clung to Mount Hua's peaks in winter. I walked through the halls with my chin high, my voice sharp, my eyes distant. They called me the Ice Princess of the Eastern Continent, and I let them. It was easier that way, pretending the world didn't matter, that I didn't need anyone. Then I came to Mythos Academy at 15. At first, he was just a curiosity. I'd watch him from across the training grounds, his dark hair catching the light as he moved, fluid, effortless. Cecilia and Rachel buzzed around him like moths to a flame, their laughter sharp and desperate. They'd bicker over him, tugging at his sleeves, their voices rising as they competed for a single glance from his steady blue eyes. It was amusing, almost ridiculous, how they unraveled for him. I'd lean against a pillar, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at my lips. Just a game to pass the time. But then it shifted. I don't know when. Maybe it was the day he caught me staring and smiled, not a flashy grin, but something small, real, like he saw past the ice I'd wrapped myself in. My chest tightened, a flutter I couldn't ignore. It grew every time he spoke to me, every time he asked how I was, his voice low and calm. He didn't demand anything, didn't push. He just cared. Arthur pulled me out of the dark. The memories of Mount Hua, the cold silences, the weight of my father's neglect, the sting of my brother's hate, started to fade when I was with him. He made me feel alive, like I wasn't just a title or a shadow of someone else's legacy. My heart beat faster around him, loud and messy and real. Right now, his fingers brush my cheek, and I melt into him. I'd do anything for him. If he asked me to leave Mount Hua behind, to walk away from the sect's ancient halls and glowing artifacts, I'd do it in a heartbeat. If he needed money, I'd empty every vault. If he wanted my life, I'd hand it over without a second thought. Even if he turned on me, plunged a dagger into my chest, I'd still look up at him and smile as the world blurred away, content to die in his arms. But Arthur doesn't ask. He never has. He doesn't care about the sex treasures or the power I could give him. He just holds me closer, his breath warm against my skin, like I'm enough. Like my heart, scratched and scarred as it is, means more to him than any blade or jewel. Arthur hesitated, his breath warm against my skin, yet he stopped short of crossing that final line with me. My body ached with a fire I couldn't ignore, a longing that pulsed through every inch of me, but he held himself back with a restraint that left me questioning. Did he even want me? I searched his face for answers, doubting myself despite the way his eyes lingered on me, dark and heavy with something unspoken. The evidence was there, his quickened pulse, the flush creeping up his neck, but still, I wondered. I'm sorry, Arthur murmured, his voice a soft rasp in my ear. His cheeks glowed a deep crimson, as if he'd caught himself staring too long, too openly. He shifted slightly, his frame hovering over mine, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. It's okay, I replied, my voice light despite the way I writhed beneath him. A small, teasing smile tugged at my lips as I brushed my fingers along his arm, strong and steady, resting over my stomach, where my muscles tensed under his touch. Tell me something, I said, tracing the lines of his bicep. You like a fit body more than, well, something bigger, don't you? Sarah, he breathed, my name sounding like a quiet plea on his lips. His eyes flickered, caught between amusement and something deeper. Say it, I pressed, my voice soft but insistent. I leaned closer, my heart pounding as I held his gaze. Tell me you find me attractive. Show me. I need you to show me. Arthur's expression softened, his hazel eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath hitch. You're breathtaking, Serafina, he said, his voice low and deliberate, each word sinking into me. The first time I saw you, really saw you, I couldn't believe someone could be so beautiful. Your hair catching the light, your smile, it stopped me cold. Heat flooded my face, a rush of warmth that spread from my cheeks to my chest. Before I could respond, his lips found mine again, urgent and sure. His body pressed closer, firm against me, and I squirmed under the weight of him, the solid feel of his chest against mine sending sparks through my veins. The kiss deepened, his hands sliding along my sides, and for a moment, the world was just us, tangled, breathless, and alive. Our kisses deepened, a tangle of lips and breath as the world around us blurred. Arthur's hands roamed my back, firm yet gentle, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. My fingers threaded through his hair, soft and slightly damp with sweat, tugging lightly as I pressed myself against him. His chest rose and fell quickly, matching the rhythm of my own racing heart. The heat between us built, electric and alive, his lips trailing from my mouth to the sensitive skin along my jaw, sending shivers down my spine. But then he paused, his forehead resting against mine, his breath uneven. "Sarah," he murmured, voice rough with reluctance, I have to stop." I pulled back slightly, blinking up at him, my lips still tingling from his touch. "What's wrong?" I asked, searching his face. He exhaled, a small, apologetic smile tugging at his mouth. "The festival tomorrow. I've got that event, early. I need to be sharp for it." Understanding settled over me, though the heat in my body protested. I nodded, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "Okay," I said softly, my voice steady despite the lingering ache. "I get it. Good luck, Arthur. You're going to do great." He smiled, gratitude flickering in his eyes. "Thanks, Sarah." I slid out from beneath him, standing and smoothing my clothes with a playful glint in my eye. "I'll stop, for now," I said, my hand drifting to my stomach, fingers brushing the toned skin there suggestively. "But just so you know, out of the 4 girls, I'll be the first to steal you back." His laugh was low, a little flustered, as he rubbed the back of his neck. I turned, slipping out of the room with a sway in my step, leaving the promise hanging in the air. Chapter 330, Boundary Breach, 1. The sun blazed overhead, its golden rays pouring down onto the vast hexagonal arena where the Boundary Breach event was about to unfold. This wasn't just any competition, it was the crown jewel of the Academy Festival, a single-day showdown where 60 students from 6 prestigious academies would battle it out, each defending their own ward crystal while seeking to destroy the others. The arena sprawled across miles, a patchwork of terrains designed to challenge every participant: rolling grassy plains, jagged rocky outcrops, shimmering sandy dunes, and even small lakes that reflected the sky like mirrors. I stood at the edge of the Mythos Academy section, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and determination. My name is Arthur Nightingale, and today, I was here to win. The air crackled with anticipation, thick enough to make my skin prickle. Around me, the other 59 competitors prepared themselves, some stretched their limbs, others murmured incantations under their breath, and a few cast wary glances at their rivals. 60 ward crystals hovered above their pedestals, each glowing with the signature color of its academy. Mythos's golden light pulsed with warmth, Slatemark's crimson flared like a flame, Starcrest's silver shimmered coolly, Gravehold's gray hung heavy and somber. Serpent Eye's emerald glinted with menace, and Pillon's deep blue radiated calm intensity. These crystals were everything: protect one, shatter the rest, and victory would be mine. The grandstands encircling the arena were packed with spectators, students shouting encouragements, teachers watching with keen eyes, and dignitaries from across the realm leaning forward in their seats. Banners snapped in the breeze, emblazoned with the crests of the 6 academies, their colors vivid against the azure sky. The noise was a constant hum, a wave of sound that fueled my adrenaline. But amidst the chaos, my focus narrowed to 3 people who mattered more than anyone else in this crowd: Cecilia, Rose, and Alara. Cecilia Slatemark caught my eye first, her crimson aura flickering around her like a living fire. She was from Mythos Academy, same as me, and she wasn't just a friend, she was my girlfriend, one of the 2 incredible women I was lucky enough to be with. Her gift of witchcraft let her twist spells into shapes that defied logic, her magic as wild and fierce as she was. We'd been together for over a year, our relationship a fiery blend of passion and competition. She sauntered over, her confident stride cutting through the crowd, and flashed me a mischievous grin. "Ready to eat dirt, Arthur?" she teased, her voice carrying that playful edge I loved. I laughed, stepping forward to meet her halfway and pulling her into a quick, tight hug. "You're the one who's gonna need a shovel, see? I've been prepping for this." She smirked, shoving me lightly in the chest. "Cocky bastard. We'll see how long that lasts." Before I could fire back, Rose Springshaper joined us, her presence as striking as Cecilia's but in a completely different way. Blue roses bloomed at her feet, their petals shimmering with paradoxical energy that bent the air around them. Like Cecilia, she was from Mythos, and she was my other girlfriend, her calm demeanor a perfect counterpoint to Cecilia's fire. Her gift of paradox let her manipulate reality itself, conjuring illusions and warping space with a thought. She tilted her head, her sharp eyes studying me. "Don't get too full of yourself, Arthur," she said, her tone light but firm. "You're strong, but we're not pushovers." I grinned, brushing a hand against her arm. "I'd be disappointed if you were. Bring your best, Rose, I'm counting on it." Then there was Alara Leopold, stepping up beside Rose with a steady, warm presence that grounded us all. She hailed from Slate Mark Academy, and though she wasn't romantically tied to me like Cecilia and Rose, she was one of my closest friends. Her support magic was unmatched, capable of healing and reinforcing with a precision that made her a force in her own right. "They're right," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "It's not just about power today. Strategy's going to win this." I crossed my arms, smirking at the three of them. Good thing I've got both covered. My gift's a cheat code, and I've been sharpening my mind too. Cecilia snorted, nudging me with her elbow. "We'll see about that, hotshot." Our banter was cut short by the blaring of a horn, a deep, resonant sound that silenced the crowd and sent a jolt through my veins. The 60 students scattered, each racing to their assigned ward crystals. I turned to Cecilia and Rose, giving each a quick kiss, first Cecilia, her lips warm and fierce against mine, then Rose, soft and lingering. "Good luck," I whispered to them both, then nodded to Alara with a smile. "You too." They returned the gestures with determined looks before we split off to our positions. I reached my pedestal, the golden Mythos crystal hovering above it, pulsating with energy. The rules were simple: protect your crystal, destroy the others, and be the last one standing. With my gift of lucent harmony, I had an edge, access to all 9 elements plus pure light and deep dark, a versatility no one else could match. Add my swordsmanship, honed through years of training, and I was a walking arsenal. But I wasn't about to get complacent. This was about precision and planning as much as power. I started with my defenses. Raising my hands, I summoned a swirling barrier of wind around the pedestal. The air howled, forming a vortex that would rip apart any spell or weapon that came too close. Next, I called up the earth, the ground trembling as stone rose and fused with veins of metal, creating a durable wall that encircled the wind barrier. I layered on a gravity field, the air thickening with a force that would slow any intruder to a crawl. Then, I distorted space around the crystal, making it appear as though it flickered between multiple locations, good luck hitting a target that wasn't where it seemed. Finally, I wove a shroud of pure light over the whole setup, its blinding radiance searing to look at, and sent tendrils of deep dark slithering through the shadows, ready to ensnare anyone foolish enough to approach. I stepped back, admiring my work. It was overkill, maybe, but I didn't take chances, not when Cecilia, Rose, and Alara were out there gunning for me too. My crystal secure, I drew my sword, the familiar weight settling into my grip, and turned my gaze to the arena. My plan was straightforward: clear out the weaker opponents fast, save my strength for the real threats, my girls and a handful of others who could actually challenge me. I moved like a storm, cutting through the chaos with purpose. The first opponent I encountered was a jittery first year from Pillon Academy, his deep blue robes flapping as he hurled a fireball my way. I raised a hand, summoning a wave of water that crashed over it, steam hissing as the flames died. Before he could recover, I blasted him with wind, knocking him off his feet, and launched into my Tempest Dance. It was a grade 5 technique I'd perfected over years. Each strike built momentum, making me faster, stronger, deadlier. My first swing sent a gust of wind that staggered him further, the second unleashed a bolt of lightning that crackled through his flimsy shield, and the third drove a shard of ice into his ward, freezing it brittle. The fourth was a tremor of earth, my blade slamming down to shatter his crystal in a burst of blue light. He stumbled back, wide-eyed, as I moved on without a word. The crowd roared with each victory, but I tuned it out, my focus absolute. A Starcrest swordsman came next, his silver blade flashing as he charged me. I parried his strikes effortlessly, our swords clanging in a brief, furious exchange before I shifted into Tempest Dance again. Wind pushed him back, lightning stunned him, and a surge of water swept him off his feet. My final strike was a slash of fire, searing through his defenses to crack his crystal. He cursed under his breath as I left him in the dust. Chapter 331, Boundary Breach, 2. Then came a Gravehold necromancer, her grey robes swirling as she summoned skeletal warriors from the ground. Their bony claws reached for me, but I countered with pure light, a radiant burst that turned them to ash. She tried to raise more, but I closed the distance, my sword slashing through her ward with a mix of ice and force. Her crystal shattered, and I was already scanning for my next target. Within the first hour, I'd taken down over a dozen opponents, their crystals winking out one by one across the arena. The field was alive with action, explosions rocked the air, shouts echoed, and spells clashed in dazzling displays of color. I caught glimpses of Cecilia, Rose, and Elara as I moved, each holding their own. Cecilia's crimson spells painted the sky, twisting into impossible patterns as she dispatched a Serpent Eyes rogue. Rose's blue roses bloomed across her section, illusions throwing off her attackers. Elara's glowing barriers stood firm, her crystal untouched despite a barrage from a Pillen mage. They were incredible, and pride swelled in my chest, but I knew I'd have to face them eventually. After clearing another cluster of weaker foes, I decided it was time to challenge Cecilia. I found her locked in combat with a Serpent Eyes assassin, his green venom darts clashing against her crimson fire. She was a whirlwind, her spells bending backward and spiraling inward, but he was slippery, dodging with unnatural speed. I stepped in, sending a wave of water to douse her flames and a gust of wind to knock him off balance. His crystal was exposed, and I shattered it with a quick slash before turning to Cecilia. She spun to face me, her eyes narrowing. "Trying to steal my kill, Arthur?" I grinned, twirling my sword. "Just helping out. But now it's your turn, see?" Her smirk widened. "Bring it on." Our fight was like a dance, electric and intense. She launched a barrage of crimson fireballs, each one twisting midair to track me. I raised an earthen wall, the flames sputtering against the stone, and countered with a blast of wind to push her back. She laughed, her voice ringing out over the chaos, and sent a gust of her own, laced with crimson sparks that stung my skin. I anchored myself with gravity, the air thickening around me, and started my Tempest Dance. My sword moved in a blur, first a slash of lightning that crackled toward her, forcing her to dodge, then a shard of ice that she blocked with a shimmering barrier, then a tremor of earth that shook the ground beneath her. She retaliated with a spell that bent space, my next strike veering off course, but I'd trained with her too many times to be thrown off. I adjusted, warping space back with my own power, and feinted with a burst of fire. She took the bait, shifting her defenses, and I closed the gap, my blade slashing through her crimson ward. Her crystal cracked under the blow, its light fading as she stumbled back, breathing hard. She looked at me, chest heaving, but her smirk didn't falter. "Not bad, you jerk. Next time, you're toast." I sheathed my sword and stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You were amazing, see. I'm proud of you." She rolled her eyes but leaned into my touch. Yeah. Just wait, I'll get you next time." I chuckled, giving her a quick kiss before moving on. "I'm counting on it." Next was Rose. Her section of the arena was a nightmare of illusions. Blue roses sprouted everywhere, their petals warping reality into a shifting maze. The ground tilted beneath me, and 3 versions of Rose appeared, each smiling that cool, enigmatic smile of hers. I took a breath, closing my eyes to focus. I could feel her mana, the subtle thread that tied the real Rose to her fakes. When I opened my eyes, I locked onto her and charged. Her voice echoed from all directions. "Think you can find me, Arthur?" Already have, I shot back, my sword cutting through the air. The illusions tried to throw me off, lunging with phantom blades, but I ignored them, my tempest dance carving a path to the real Rose. Winds scattered the fakes, lightning tested her defenses, and ice slowed her movements. She warped reality, dodging with a grace that took my breath away, but I countered with a flicker of time distortion, freezing her for a split second. It was enough. I lunged, my blade shattering her crystal in a burst of blue petals. The illusions faded, and Rose stood before me, her expression soft with admiration. "You're incredible, Arthur. I knew you'd win." I pulled her into a hug, her warmth steadying me. "You made it tough, Rose. I love that about you." She blushed, resting her forehead against mine. "Just keep pushing yourself, okay? For us." "Always," I promised, kissing her gently before stepping back. Finally, Elara. Her crystal was a fortress, surrounded by layers of glowing barriers that shimmered with her support magic. She wasn't flashy, but she was relentless, her defenses healing any damage as fast as it was dealt. I approached, sword ready, and met her steady gaze. "Arthur," she said, her voice calm. "I won't make this easy." I nodded. "Wouldn't want it any other way." I unleashed everything. Fire roared, lightning cracked, ice splintered, but her barriers adapted, absorbing each hit. She was a wall, unyielding, and I respected the hell out of her for it. I needed something bigger. I stepped back, taking a deep breath, and started my tempest dance, building speed and power. My sword glowed with pure light, its light intensifying as I poured my energy into it. Elara saw it coming, her barriers thickening, but I was done holding back. With a roar, I unleashed God Flash, a blinding, world-shaking slash that tore through the air like a comet. The pure light blade ripped through her defenses, smashing her crystal to pieces in a shower of light and dust. She stared at the wreckage, then at me, her eyes wide with awe. "That was unreal, Arthur. You're something else." I lowered my sword, panting. "You're a beast, Elara. Took everything I had." She smiled, warm and genuine. "You deserve this win. You've earned it." "Thanks," I said, clapping her shoulder. "Means a lot." With my friends out, I turned to the remaining opponents. Only a handful were left, and they didn't stand a chance. A Serpent Eyes mage tried stealth and poison, but I smothered his shadows with deep dark and pinned him with gravity, shattering his crystal in seconds. A Starcrest archer fired silver arrows, but I deflected them with wind and closed in with Tempest Dance, ending her run. One by one, the crystals fell, until only mine glowed, a solitary golden beacon in the silent arena. The crowd erupted, their cheers shaking the stands. I'd done it, I'd won the boundary breach. Sweat dripped down my face, my muscles ached, but triumph surged through me. I sheathed my sword and turned to find Cecilia, Rose, and Elara waiting at the edge of the arena, their faces alight with pride. Cecilia reached me first, slugging my arm with a grin. "You did it, you cocky bastard." Rose stepped up, her hand slipping into mine. "We knew you could." Elara nodded, her smile warm. "You're the best, Arthur. No question." I pulled Cecilia and Rose into my arms, their bodies pressed close, and motioned Elara to join us. She did, and we stood there, a tight knot of friendship and love. "I couldn't have done it without you three," I said, my voice thick. "You push me every day." Cecilia laughed, her breath warm against my neck. "Don't get sappy now. Next time, I'm kicking your ass." Rose squeezed my hand. "We'll catch up to you. Watch out." Elara's eyes twinkled. "Stay sharp, or we'll surpass you." I grinned, slinging an arm around Cecilia and Rose, Elara walking beside us as we left the arena. Wouldn't have it any other way. The cheers faded behind us, the day mine but the future ours. Victory was sweet, but this, them, was what mattered most. Chapter 332, Miasma Purification Challenge. The grand arena of the Academy Festival buzzed with anticipation as 60 students from the 6 prestigious academies prepared for the Miasma Purification Challenge. This individual event was a highlight of the festival, testing each participant's ability to purify blocks of miasma using their own mana to counter its elemental forces. Points were awarded based on the size and difficulty of the purified blocks, and with miasma sharing the same elemental properties as mana, success demanded both skill and strategy. Among the white rankers, the highest tier of students, 3 figures stood out: Arya Gu, a fire mage from the eastern continent, Elara Leopold, a versatile support mage from Slate Mark Academy, and Rachel Creighton, a light magic prodigy from Mythos Academy, whose prowess marked her as the future saintess. As the starting horn reverberated through the arena, the students sprang into action, scattering across the vast field where miasma blocks awaited within glowing crystals. Each crystal pulsed with dark energy, its color revealing its elemental alignment: crimson for fire, azure for water, verdant for wind, and so on. The challenge was clear: purify as many blocks as possible within the time limit by countering the miasma's elemental nature with opposing mana. For most, this meant targeting blocks their magic could efficiently neutralize, but for a select few, the rules bent in their favor. Arya Gu, her crimson robes fluttering in the wind, wasted no time. As a fire mage hailing from the eastern continent, she thrived on intensity and precision. Her sharp eyes locked onto a cluster of green-tinted crystals, wind-aligned miasma, vulnerable to her flames. She approached the first block, her hand outstretched, and summoned a torrent of fire mana. The crystal flared as the miasma within writhed, resisting for a moment before succumbing to the heat. With a sharp crack, the crystal shattered, the miasma dissipating in a wisp of smoke. 1 point earned. Too easy, Arya muttered, a smirk tugging at her lips as she moved to the next green block. Her strategy was straightforward: seek out wind and ice miasma, both weak to fire, and rack up points quickly. She darted across the field, her flames leaving a trail of shattered crystals in her wake. The early minutes favored her, her aggressive approach earning her a solid lead as she purified small and medium blocks with ruthless efficiency. Elara Leopold, by contrast, took a more measured approach. Known for her support magic, she lacked the raw destructive power of specialists like Arya but compensated with versatility. Her silver hair glinted under the sunlight as she approached an azure water-aligned block. Water miasma called for an earth counter, and Elara's mana shifted seamlessly, mimicking the grounding force of soil. She channeled her spell with calm focus, the miasma resisting her efforts at first. Slowly, the dark energy began to fade, and after a tense minute, the crystal cracked apart, granting her 3 points for the medium-sized block. Elara exhaled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Steady wins the race, she told herself, moving to her next target. Her strength lay in adaptability. She could purify any elemental type, though not as swiftly as those with specialized mana. She methodically worked through a mix of small and medium blocks, her points accumulating at a consistent pace. While others raced ahead, Elara's patience ensured she wouldn't falter as the challenge grew tougher. Then there was Rachel Creighton, a vision of grace and power. Her light magic, a rare gift that set her apart even among white rankers, glowed softly around her hands as she glided through the arena. Unlike her peers, Rachel didn't need to match elements. Light was the ultimate purifier, capable of cleansing any miasma with equal potency. She targeted a large crimson block, its fire-aligned miasma pulsing menacingly. With a gentle touch, her radiant mana enveloped the crystal. The miasma didn't stand a chance. It dissolved in seconds, the crystal shattering with a melodic chime. 5 points, effortlessly claimed. Rachel's golden hair shimmered as she moved, her expression serene yet determined. She was in a league of her own, her light magic a perfect fit for the challenge. Where others struggled with counters, Rachel flowed from block to block, purifying small, medium, and large crystals with the same ease. As the future saintess, she carried an air of inevitability, her dominance unfolding before the awestruck crowd. Halfway through the event, the arena's landscape shifted. The smaller, easier blocks had largely been purified, leaving behind medium and large crystals that demanded greater effort. Arya found herself facing a row of yellow earth-aligned blocks, their sturdy nature a poor match for her fire magic. She gritted her teeth, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "This is going to take forever," she growled, channeling a burst of flames into one of the crystals. The miasma resisted, forcing her to pour more mana into the spell. After a grueling minute, the crystal finally broke, but the effort left her panting. Glancing around, she spotted a few remaining green blocks across the field and sprinted toward them, determined to reclaim her momentum. Elara, meanwhile, maintained her rhythm. She'd amassed a respectable score by sticking to her strategy, but now she faced a choice. A large water-aligned block loomed ahead, its 5-point promise tempting her. She took a deep breath and began weaving a complex spell, blending earth and lightning mana to counter the miasma's fluid energy. The process was slow, the dense corruption pushing back against her efforts, but Elara's focus never wavered. When the crystal finally shattered, she smiled faintly, the reward worth the strain. Rachel's advantage only grew as the challenge progressed. The larger blocks, which intimidated others with their intensity, were no obstacle to her. She approached a massive violet block, air-aligned miasma, notoriously difficult to pin down, and unleashed a wave of light mana. The crystal glowed brilliantly before bursting apart, its 5 points added to her tally without breaking her stride. The crowd murmured in awe, her performance a spectacle of skill and power. As the final minutes approached, all eyes turned to the center of the arena, where 3 corrupted core blocks stood. These swirling masses of dark energy, each worth 10 points, were the ultimate test of a mage's ability. Arya, Elara, and Rachel converged on the area, joined by a handful of other determined students. Arya reached the first core, her fire mana blazing as she attacked the miasma. The corruption was thick, resisting her flames with stubborn ferocity. She poured more power into her spell, sweat beading on her forehead, but the purification crawled along, each second ticking away her chances. Elara chose the second core, her support magic adapting to the task. She conjured a multi-layered spell, combining elements to chip away at the miasma. It was effective, but agonizingly slow, her steady approach stretched to its limits by the core's complexity. Rachel stepped up to the third core, her light magic flaring with radiant intensity. She placed both hands on the crystal, and a blinding flash erupted, the miasma dissolving in an instant. The crystal shattered with a thunderous crack, 10 points secured. Without pausing, she turned to Arya's core, her voice cutting through the tension. "Let me help," she said, her tone warm but firm. Arya blinked, caught off guard. "You don't have to." Before she could finish, Rachel touched the crystal, and another flash of light purified it completely. The core broke apart, its points technically Arya's, though Rachel's intervention was undeniable. "Thanks," Arya said, a mix of gratitude and rivalry in her voice. "But I'm not done fighting yet." Rachel smiled. "I'd expect nothing less." With the corrupted cores vanquished, the last few blocks were purified in a frantic rush, and the horn sounded, signaling the end. The students gathered at the center, breathless and eager, as the announcer tallied the scores. In first place, the future saintess, Rachel Creighton of Mythos Academy, the voice boomed. The crowd erupted, cheering as Rachel stepped forward, her face glowing with pride. Her light magic had allowed her to purify more blocks, and the toughest ones, than anyone else, her score towering over the competition. In second place, Elara Leopold of Slate Mark Academy. Elara nodded, satisfied. She hadn't matched Rachel's brilliance, but her consistency had carried her far. And in third place, Arya Gu of the Eastern Continent. Chapter 333, Blue Rose's Heart, 1. The festival had been a whirlwind of adrenaline and grit, but claiming first place in Boundary Breach felt like a quiet victory. My muscles throbbed from the effort, and my mind hummed with the thrill as I collapsed onto my bed. Late afternoon sun poured through the window, casting long shadows across the room. I was still replaying the moment I'd crossed the finish line, cheers echoing in my ears, when a soft knock snapped me out of it. The door creaked open, and there was Rose, leaning against the frame with a grin that sharpened her already striking features. Her dark auburn hair was a mess from the event, strands sticking out wildly, and a smudge of dirt streaked her cheek. She looked worn but alive, her energy practically crackling. She was the last of the 4 girls to stop by, and something about that felt right. "First place, huh?" she said, stepping inside and nudging the door shut with her heel. "Nice work, Arthur." "Congrats." "Thanks," I said, pushing myself up a bit. "You weren't far off. I saw you out there, you're relentless." She laughed, a low, warm sound that rolled through the room, and dropped onto the bed beside me. Relentless doesn't always beat fast. But I'll take the compliment. For a moment, we just sat there, the air between us buzzing with something unspoken. Her knee brushed mine, and I caught a faint whiff of sweat mixed with something floral clinging to her skin. Before I could overthink it, she turned, her hazel eyes catching mine, and leaned in. Her lips hit mine, warm and bold, and my hands slid to her waist like they'd known the way all along. She tasted faintly of salt and the day's exertion, her breath catching as I kissed her back, deeper, hungrier. My fingers pressed into her sides, pulling her closer until she was half in my lap, her hands climbing my chest to grip my shoulders. The mattress creaked under us as she shifted, her lean, strong frame pressing against me. I tilted my head, kissing the curve of her neck, and she let out a soft gasp, her fingers tightening in my shirt. The room shrank around us, the air growing thick as we fell into it, lips crashing, hands roaming, my pulse hammering under her touch. She didn't hesitate like the others might have. There was no second guessing, no careful steps. Rose knew what she wanted, and right now, that was me. Her confidence pulled me in, made my head spin. "I waited all day for this," she murmured against my skin, her voice rough and low, sending a jolt down my spine. "Watching you out there, pushing past everyone." Her teeth grazed my jaw, light but deliberate. Made it hard to focus. I chuckled, my hands sliding along her back, feeling the warmth of her through her shirt. "So that's why you came in third?" Too busy staring at my stunning victory. She pulled back just enough to shoot me a fake glare, her eyes glinting with that fire I'd seen on the course. "I came in third because you and that other guy were monsters. But yeah, you didn't help." A slow, teasing smile curved her lips. "You looked good out there." Before I could toss back a quip, she kissed me again, her hands tangling in my hair, tugging just enough to draw a low sound from my throat. The admission, that she'd been watching me, thinking about me, lit a spark in my chest. I deepened the kiss, my hands slipping to her hips, gripping the fabric there as she pressed closer. Her body was solid, shaped by years of training, and I could feel the strength in her even now. She pushed me back, and I let her, my shoulders hitting the mattress as she climbed over me, straddling my hips. The fading sunlight caught her hair, turning the edges a soft bronze, dust from the arena still clinging to her like a badge. I couldn't look away. "You're staring," she said, her lips quirking into a half-smile. "Hard not to," I shot back, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Something flickered in her expression, something softer, before she leaned down and kissed me again, slower this time, deliberate. Her hands slid to my chest, fingers splaying over my shirt as she explored the shape of me. I could feel the heat of her palms through the fabric, steady and sure. My own hands traced up her arms, brushing over the faint lines of muscle, then back down to rest at her waist. She shifted, her lips moving to my neck again, and I tilted my head to give her space, my breath hitching as she found a spot just below my ear. Her hair brushed my cheek, soft despite the tangles, and I slid a hand into it, holding her there for a moment as she kissed me. The rhythm of it was easy, natural, like we'd done this 100 times before. "Rose," I murmured, my voice rough as her lips grazed my collarbone, lingering over a fresh bruise from the event. She hummed against my skin, not stopping. I grinned, despite the heat pooling in my chest. "You're gonna leave a mark." "Good," she said, pulling back to flash me a wicked smile. "Something to remember me by." I laughed, low and genuine, and pulled her back down, kissing her hard. Her hands gripped my shoulders, nails digging in just enough to feel, and I rolled us slightly so she was on her side, pressed close. Our legs tangled, her knees sliding between mine as we kept going, lips and breath and the occasional soft sound breaking the quiet. My hand found the small of her back, pressing her tighter against me, and she arched into it, her fingers curling into my hair again. Time slipped away, the kisses slowing but never stopping, each one lingering a little longer than the last. Her lips were soft now, less urgent, and I could feel her heartbeat through her shirt, steady against my chest. My own pulse had calmed, but the warmth of her stayed, grounding me. Eventually, she pulled back, just an inch, her forehead resting against mine. Her breath fanned over my face, warm and uneven, and I opened my eyes to find her watching me, hazel irises catching the last of the dimming light. "You're different with me," she said quietly, her hands sliding to rest on my jaw. "Not as wound up." "Maybe because you don't poke at me like the others do," I said, half joking, half serious. She nodded, a small smile tugging at her mouth. "I don't need to figure you out, Arthur. I just like this, what's here." Her words hit me, simple and true. Rose didn't demand anything, didn't dig for more than I gave. She took me as I was, and that was enough. I kissed her again, soft this time, and she melted into it, her hands slipping to my chest. We shifted, lying side by side now, her head tucked against my shoulder. My arm draped over her, fingers brushing lazily through her auburn hair as the room darkened around us. The sun had dipped below the horizon while we'd been lost in each other, and neither of us bothered to turn on a light. Her breathing evened out, warm against my neck, and I felt the weight of the day finally settle, replaced by something calmer, quieter. We stayed like that, tangled in the sheets, the world outside fading to nothing. Chapter 334, Blue Rose's Heart, 2. The roses appeared in my dreams again last night. Black. Crimson. Pale white. They crawled across the landscape of my subconscious, unfurling in waves that rippled out from my footsteps. I knew what they meant. Even sealed away, my gift remembers what it once was. What I once was. What I still am, beneath the layers of magic woven to protect me from her. I woke with my heart hammering against my ribs, the sheets damp with sweat. The pre-dawn light filtered through the half-drawn curtains, painting the room in shades of blue and gray. Beside me, Arthur slept soundly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm that anchored me to reality. I watched him for a moment, tracing the lines of his face with my eyes. The sharp angle of his jaw. The slight furrow between his brows that never fully disappeared, even in sleep. The scar that cut through his left eyebrow, still pink from a battle too recent for comfort. He looked peaceful. Untroubled. So different from the calculated intensity he wore like armor when awake. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him, and padded to the window. The academy grounds stretched out before me, quiet and still in the early morning hush. My hand drifted to my stomach, to the spot where a tattoo of a blue rose bloomed across my skin. Not a fashion choice. A mark. The physical manifestation of my gift that appeared the day my true power awakened. Sometimes I wonder what Arthur sees when he looks at me. Does he see the girl who fought beside him in the boundary breach yesterday? The woman who came to his room in the aftermath, drawn by something neither of us fully understand? Or does he see beyond that, to the truth of what I am, daughter of the Pope of the Order of the Fallen Flame, a woman whose name is whispered in fear across the continent? Does he see the power that flows through my veins, no longer sealed away but coiled inside me like a sleeping serpent? As if summoned by my thoughts, I felt arms encircle my waist, warm lips press against the crook of my neck. "You're thinking too loudly," Arthur murmured, his voice rough with sleep. His fingers brushed over the blue rose tattoo, tracing its outline with a familiarity that still surprised me. Bad dreams? I leaned back into him, letting his warmth seep into my skin. The usual. His hand splayed across my stomach, covering the tattoo completely, as if he could shield me from my own blood, my own destiny. The blue rose, impossible in nature, vivid on my skin, pulsed faintly beneath his touch, responding to him in ways I still didn't fully understand. Your mother again? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Even now, the memory of Evelyn Alaric could steal the breath from my lungs. She can't touch you here, Arthur said, his words a low rumble against my back. I almost laughed. Anyone else would sound naive saying that, but from Arthur, it was almost believable. I'd seen what he could do, seen the power he kept leashed beneath his skin. If anyone could stand against my mother, it might be him. But I wouldn't let him try. She'd burn the world to ash to get what she wants, I said quietly. And what she wants is me. Arthur turned me to face him, his eyes searching mine in the dim light. Then she'll have to go through me first. The corner of my mouth tugged upward. My hero, I said, the teasing tone not quite hiding the sincerity beneath. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face, softening the edges, illuminating something young and almost innocent that he kept carefully hidden from the world. His thumb brushed my cheek, a tender gesture at odds with the calluses hardened by swordplay and combat. You don't need a hero, Rose, he said. You need someone who sees you for exactly what you are and stays anyway. My heart constricted painfully in my chest. That was what drew me to him from the beginning, his unflinching acceptance. The moment he learned who my mother was, I'd braced myself for the inevitable retreat. The fear. The disgust that always followed once people knew I carried the blood of a monster in my veins. Instead, he'd simply raised an eyebrow and said, "And? You're not her." For words that had shattered every wall I'd built. Come back to bed, he said now, tugging gently at my hand. It's too early for existential dread. I followed him, watching the play of muscles across his back as he moved, the faint scars that mapped his own history of violence and survival. We were alike in that way, marked by our pasts, carrying wounds both visible and hidden. As we settled back onto the mattress, his fingers found the tattoo again, tracing its contours with a gentleness that made me shiver. Something flickered across his face, a shadow of old pain, quickly masked. Sometimes the harder path is the only one that lets you live with yourself afterward. I recognized the deflection but didn't push. We all had parts of ourselves we weren't ready to share. Instead, I placed my hand over his where it rested on my tattoo. I used to fear it, I confessed. This mark. What it represents. The potential for destruction it holds within me. And now? I let out a long breath. Now I think it's a reminder. A warning. Arthur's eyes darkened. You're not her, Rose. I have her blood, I reminded him. Her gift. And your father's heart, he countered, his palm pressing more firmly against the tattoo, as if he could reach through skin and muscle to touch the essence of me. I've seen you fight. You're vicious when you need to be, but you never enjoy causing pain. You protect people. You choose mercy when you can afford it. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I blinked them back fiercely. How can you be so sure? When even I'm not. His answer was to kiss me, not with the hunger of last night, but with something deeper, steadier. A certainty that flowed from him into me. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Because I see you, Rose Springshaper. Not your mother's daughter. Not your gift. Just you. In that moment, I believed him. In that moment, the blue rose on my skin warmed pleasantly, as if responding to his faith in me, and the roses that haunted my dreams seemed distant, powerless. He shifted, pulling me against his chest, his heartbeat strong beneath my ear. Outside, dawn was breaking fully, golden light spilling across the room, chasing away shadows. Soon we would have to rejoin the world, face the next stage of the tournament, navigate the complex politics of the academy, deal with the ever-present threat of my mother's return. But for now, in this brief space between night and day, I allowed myself to simply exist. To be Rose, not Evelyn's daughter, not the girl with the reality-bending gift, not the competitor who had placed third in yesterday's event. Just Rose, lying in the arms of a boy who saw me clearly and stayed anyway. Just Rose, blooming despite the shadow my mother had cast across my life. Just Rose, finally beginning to believe that love might be stronger than blood, than destiny, than the twisted legacy I'd inherited. I pressed my lips to the hollow of Arthur's throat, felt his pulse jump beneath my touch. "Thank you," I whispered. His arms tightened around me, and I felt rather than saw his smile. For what? For seeing me. For staying. For making me believe, even fleetingly, that I could escape the path my mother had walked. But all I said was, for being real, and let the weight of those simple words carry all the rest. Chapter 335, Artifact Synthesis Race. The artifact synthesis race buzzed with tension as 60 students filled the open-air workshop, a sprawling space nestled within the festival grounds. Workbenches lined the area, each cluttered with tools, beast parts, and raw materials. The air smelled of singed metal and damp earth, the late morning sun glinting off blades and scales scattered across the tables. The challenge was clear: transform a mundane weapon into an artifact, normal grade at minimum, advanced if you dared. Time limit, 3 hours. Success hinged on skill, magic, and a steady hand. Rose Springshaper stood at her station, auburn hair tied back in a messy knot, brown eyes narrowed in focus. Her gift of paradox, tied to the elusive blue rose, shimmered faintly in her palms, a soft cerulean glow that pulsed with contradiction, bending rules in ways others couldn't predict. She'd chosen a simple steel dagger as her base, its edge dull but its potential sharp in her mind. Beside it lay her materials, a jagged claw from a 5-star stormhawk, its tip crackling with residual lightning, and a vial of sap from a thorned azure vine, glowing faintly blue. Her plan was ambitious, an advanced-grade artifact, something that could twist its own nature mid-strike. Across the workshop, Clana Lopez worked with equal intensity. Her navy blue hair spilled over her shoulders, catching the light like deep ocean waves, and her violet eyes gleamed with quiet determination. Her gift painted her magic with a purple hue, a vibrant shimmer that danced around her fingers as she handled a short spear. Her materials were just as striking: a fong from a 5-star dusk viper, its venom sac still faintly pulsing, and a shard of amethyst quartz humming with latent energy. She, too, aimed for advanced grade, her mind already mapping the weave of magic and beast essence she'd need. The horn blared, signaling the start, and the workshop erupted into controlled chaos. Hammers clanged, magic flared, and students muttered incantations under their breath. Rose wasted no time. She gripped the Stormhawk claw, its electric hum tingling up her arm, and pressed it against the dagger's blade. Her gift flared, blue light spiraling from her hands, and she whispered a command: strength that weakens. The claw softened, melding into the steel, its lightning threading through the metal in faint, crackling veins. She worked fast, her movements precise, sweat beading on her brow as she balanced the paradox, making the blade both fragile and deadly. Clana, meanwhile, traced her fingers along the spear's shaft, purple magic seeping into the wood. She crushed the dusk viper fong in her palm, its venom dripping onto the spearhead, and channeled her gift to bind it. The purple glow intensified, staining the weapon with a shimmering sheen, and she murmured, "Pierce and pull." The venom fused with the steel, promising a strike that would both wound and sap an enemy's strength. She glanced at the amethyst shard, her next step, and reached for her chisel with a steady hand. The first hour passed in a blur. Around them, students faltered, some overreached, their weapons cracking under unstable magic, while others played it safe, settling for normal-grade artifacts. A boy near Rose cursed as his axe glowed briefly then dulled, the beast horn he'd used crumbling to ash. A girl beside Clana grinned as her mace pulsed with a faint green light, satisfied with her normal-grade success. But Rose and Clana pressed on, their focus unshaken, their ambitions higher. Rose poured the azure vine sap into a shallow bowl, dipping the dagger's blade into it. The liquid hissed, blue tendrils curling up the steel, and she channeled her gift again. "Cut that heals," she breathed, her voice low but firm. The sap hardened, coating the blade in a thin, translucent layer that shimmered like frost. It was a risk, paradoxes were tricky, and the magic could collapse if she misjudged the balance. She tested the edge with her thumb, wincing as it drew blood, then smiled as the cut tingled and closed. It was working. Clana embedded the amethyst shard into the spear's haft, her purple magic flaring as she fused it with the wood. The crystal pulsed, amplifying the venom's reach, and she shaped the energy with a whispered, "Spread and bind." The spearhead gleamed, its tip now trailing faint purple wisps, a weapon that could strike once and cripple over time. She spun it in her hands, testing its weight, and nodded to herself. The advanced grade was in sight, but the clock was ticking. By the second hour, the gap between the leaders and the rest widened. Rose's dagger thrummed with a strange energy, its blade flickering between solid steel and something almost liquid. She etched runes along the hilt, symbols of contradiction she'd memorized from old texts, her hands steady despite the strain. The Stormhawk's lightning crackled faintly, arcing between her fingers, and she gritted her teeth, forcing it to settle. "Stay," she muttered, and the glow stabilized, locking the artifact's power in place. Clana's spear was taking shape, its purple aura growing richer. She carved channels into the shaft, guiding the amethyst's energy to the tip, her violet eyes sharp with focus. The dusk viper venom had fully integrated, giving the spearhead a glossy, almost wet look, and she tested it with a quick thrust. The air hummed, a faint pull tugging at her own hand, and she adjusted her magic to refine the effect. It was close, dangerously close, to perfection. The final hour loomed, and the workshop grew quieter, the weaker attempts fading as students finished or gave up. Rose's brown eyes flicked to Clana, catching the purple glow across the room. She knew Clana was a threat, her precision was legendary among the white rankers, but Rose trusted her own edge. She gripped the dagger, channeling one last surge of her gift, blue light flooding the blade. "Break to mend," she said, and the weapon pulsed, its form complete. She set it down, panting, its advanced grade aura unmistakable. Clana felt the pressure, her navy hair sticking to her sweat-damp neck. She poured her remaining magic into the spear, purple tendrils wrapping it like vines. "Hold and drain," she commanded, and the amethyst flared, locking the artifact's power. She stepped back, hands trembling slightly, and examined her work. The spear radiated advanced-grade energy, its purple sheen a testament to her skill. She glanced at Rose, a flicker of rivalry in her violet eyes, and knew it'd be tight. The horn sounded again, ending the race. The proctors moved through the workshop, inspecting each artifact with glowing orbs that measured grade and stability. Normal-grade weapons lit the orbs a steady white, while advanced ones sparked gold. Most students earned white, 42 by the final count. A handful failed entirely, their weapons inert or shattered. But the proctors lingered at Rose's and Clana's stations, orbs flashing gold as they tested the dagger and spear. Rose's dagger glowed first, its blue aura steady, the paradox woven into its core holding firm. The proctor nodded, marking her score. Clana's spear followed, its purple energy rippling, the venom and amethyst in perfect harmony. The proctor hesitated, comparing notes, then called for a second opinion. The crowd murmured, eyes darting between the two girls. Rose stood with her arms crossed, auburn hair falling loose, her breath shallow but even. Clana brushed her navy hair back, violet eyes calm but expectant. The proctors conferred, their voices low, until one stepped forward. Rose Springshaper, first place. Advanced grade artifact, synthesis time 2 hours, 58 minutes. Clana Lopez, second place. Advanced grade artifact, synthesis time 2 hours, 59 minutes. A ripple of applause broke out, though Rose barely heard it. She'd edged Clana by a single minute, her final surge of magic had tipped the scale. Clana met her gaze, offering a small, grudging nod, respect outweighing the sting of second place. Rose returned it, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. The proctors displayed the artifacts, Rose's dagger, its blade shimmering blue, capable of cutting and healing in the same stroke, Clana's spear, purple and sleek, draining strength with every hit. Both were marvels, proof of their mind aspect gifts, Rose's paradoxes bending reality, Klana's purple magic weaving precision and power. As the crowd dispersed, Rose hefted her dagger, feeling its weight. Klana twirled her spear once, then slung it over her shoulder. Chapter 336, Tactical Simulation, 1. The final preliminary event of the Inter Academy Festival loomed before us, a virtual crucible designed to forge victors from chaos. 60 students, each handed the reins of an army, would step into a sprawling VR battlefield where strategy and strength would collide. The rules were deceptively simple: capture glowing objectives scattered across the map to swell your forces. The catch? The higher your rank, the weaker your starting soldiers, a so-called balancing act to level the playing field. I saw it for what it was, a puzzle begging to be solved, a challenge daring me to outthink the system itself. I stood by my assigned pod in the VR hub, arms crossed, a faint smirk tugging at my lips. This won't be simple, I murmured, my voice a quiet thread lost in the hum of the chamber. Simple was dull. The real complication wasn't the rules, it was the players. Ren was here, a rank below me but a storm in human form, his presence a guarantee of chaos. After Lucifer and Jack, he was the last person I wanted to cross swords with too early. Then there were Seraphina and Jean, each a force of nature in their own right, both hungry for the same prize I was. The VR hub buzzed with restless energy, a sterile expanse of white walls and polished floors lined with 60 sleek pods that gleamed under the stark overhead lights. Students milled about, some paced, boots tapping out nervous rhythms, others stretched, flexing muscles that wouldn't matter once the helmets took over. I scanned the room, cataloging threats. Seraphina stood a few stations down, silver hair glinting like a blade, her posture rigid and unyielding as if she'd already iced the competition in her mind, though her expression did melt when our eyes crossed. Jean leaned against the back wall, dark eyes roving the crowd, hands resting lightly on the hilts of his twin short swords, casual but coiled. Ren slouched by his pod, violet gaze sweeping the room, lingering on me for a heartbeat before sliding away, a silent gauntlet thrown. The proctor stepped forward, a wiry figure clutching a glowing tablet. His voice sliced through the chatter, sharp and authoritative. Participants, prepare to enter the VR pods. The event begins in 5 minutes. A ripple of motion swept the room as students turned to their stations. I took a slow, steadying breath, letting the nerves settle into focus. My pod's door hissed open, revealing a sleek interior, a contoured seat, a helmet-like device suspended above it, and walls that shimmered faintly with embedded tech. I stepped inside, the door sealing behind me with a soft click. The seat molded to my frame as I sat, and the helmet descended automatically, fitting snugly over my head, its cool metal pressing against my temples. A mechanical voice hummed in my ears, calm and precise. Initiating VR link. Please remain still. The hub faded, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors, blues and greens bleeding into reds and golds. A fleeting wave of disorientation tugged at my senses as my consciousness slipped from flesh to code, plunging into the virtual realm. When the colors coalesced, I stood on a vast, open plain. The sky burned a deep, ominous red, casting an eerie glow over a patchwork of cracked dirt and sparse grass. In the distance, glowing objectives pierced the horizon like lances of light, beacons of power waiting to be claimed. My army materialized around me, 50 soldiers in total, their forms flickering into existence. They were a ragtag lot, tattered armor, mismatched weapons, but their eyes blazed with resolve. I could feel their loyalty, a quiet pulse of trust binding them to my will. I raised a hand, summoning the holographic map. It shimmered into view, a translucent grid hovering before me. The objectives dotted the landscape, each one a strategic linchpin designed to spark conflict. 3 stood out, east, west, and central, their positions forcing movement, confrontation. I traced the terrain with my eyes, hills to the east, a ravine cutting through the west, flat ground in the center. A plan clicked into place. Listen up, I said, my voice carrying over the wind. My soldiers snapped to attention. We split into 3. Group A, take the eastern objective, use the hills for cover. Group B, head west, watch the ravine, don't get pinned. Group C, you're with me. We secure the center. They nodded, dividing with practiced efficiency. I led Group C toward the central beacon, my mind churning through possibilities. Ren would beeline for a key point. He thrived on bold moves. Serafina would play it cold, calculated, picking off stragglers. Jean. He'd adapt, strike where the chaos peaked. The center was a gamble, open, exposed, but it was the fulcrum. Hold it, and I'd dictate the flow. The beacon loomed ahead, a tower of light pulsing against the crimson sky. My boots crunched on the dry earth as we closed in, but a shadow shifted on the horizon. Another army, already there. A familiar figure stood at its head, Ren, his violet eyes catching the glow, a smirk curling his lips. So, we meet again, Arthur, he called, his voice ringing across the field. I matched his smirk. Looks like it. Ready to lose? He laughed, sharp and reckless. We'll see about that. The battle erupted, our armies slamming together in a storm of steel and shouts. I barked orders, directing Group C to fan out, using the flat terrain to maneuver. Ren's forces hit hard, his commands crisp and lethal, soldiers moving like extensions of his will. Blades clashed, dust kicked up in clouds, and the air thrummed with the chaos of war. I ducked a wild swing from one of his vanguard, driving my elbow into their gut and shoving them back. My eyes tracked Ren through the melee. He was a blur of motion, cutting through my lines with ruthless precision. But I'd planned for this. I raised a hand, signaling Group A and Group B via the map's comms. Flank now. From the east and west, my reinforcements surged, crashing into Ren's rear like twin hammers. His formation buckled, soldiers spinning to face the new threat, and for a split second, I saw his eyes widen. The pincer tightened, my troops pressing the advantage, and his lines began to fray. In the chaos, Ren broke through, charging straight for me. His fist lashed out, a blur aimed at my jaw. I sidestepped, countering with a kick to his ribs. He grunted, twisting to grab my leg, but I pulled free, landing a sharp jab to his shoulder. We traded blows, each strike a test, a measure of the other's limits, his raw power against my speed. Sweat stung my eyes, the red sky blurring at the edges. Around us, the battle tilted, his army faltered under the pincer, mine gained ground. Ren's smirk faded, replaced by a gritted snarl as he lunged again. I caught his wrist, twisted, and drove my knee into his midsection, sending him staggering back. He straightened, breathing hard, violet eyes locked on mine. His soldiers were crumbling, the central objective slipping from his grasp. But he didn't yield, not yet. He raised a hand, rallying what remained of his force, and I knew this wasn't over. I planted my feet, my own troops rallying behind me, the beacon's light bathing us in its glow. Last chance, Ren, I said, voice steady. He grinned, fierce and unbowed. Bring it. Chapter 337, Tactical Simulation, 2. Fighting Ren wasn't my first choice, but fear had nothing to do with it. I swung my sword downward, flames dancing along the blade's edge, fueled by enhanced aura of fire. Ren shifted into a stance reminiscent of karate, his body coiled with precision, then unleashed a flawless straight punch. His fist, cloaked in a gravity-enhanced aura, met my sword with a thunderous clash, forcing the blade, and me, back a step. You've truly achieved fist intent, I said, keeping my voice steady. Ren tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. What, did you think I couldn't reach that level? Not at all, I shot back, mirroring his smile. Just means I'll have to push harder. I turned my focus inward, connecting to Luna's will rather than relying on raw physicality. As I activated Lucent Harmony, golden sigils flared across my skin, each one a conduit for my awakened elemental affinities, including the dark pulse of my black star. Erebus, I called silently, summoning my lich. I handed him control of the deep dark's shadowy depths, freeing my white star to channel the radiant power of pure light. Ren's eyes gleamed with excitement. We circled each other, trading blows with nothing but honed skill, our movements sharp and unadorned, no grand techniques, just the raw essence of combat. The fight escalated quickly. Ren's fists moved like battering rams, each strike a test of my reflexes. My sword flashed in response, a streak of fire and light carving through the air. But Ren's god's eyes gave him an edge, reading my every motion. He feinted left, then drove a fist straight at my chest. I raised my sword to parry, but the sheer power behind his punch overwhelmed my guard. His knuckles slammed into my chest, pain bursting through my ribs. But that was exactly what I'd wanted. As the impact rocked me backward, I seized the moment, letting Erebus's power surge. Bone armor hardened my skin into an unyielding shield at the perfect instant, absorbing the blow entirely. Ren's triumphant expression faltered, his fist skidding off harmlessly. Using the momentum, I twisted and snapped a kick toward his side. His god's eyes caught the move. He raised an arm to block, but my timing threw him off. The kick slipped past his imperfect defense, landing solidly and forcing him to stagger back, his balance disrupted. I didn't let up. My sword sang as I pressed forward, each swing precise and relentless. Ren recovered fast, his fists up and ready, but a flicker of doubt shadowed his gaze. He hadn't seen the trap coming, and now, I had the upper hand. Ren's stagger gave me the opening I needed, but I knew better than to underestimate him. Those god's eyes of his were already tracking me, his mind piecing together my next move. I couldn't let him reset. My sword flared brighter, flames licking the air as I lunged forward, but this time, I wasn't playing small. I tapped into God Flash, my grade 6 art movement. Pure light surged through me, my body dissolving into a streak of radiance. The world blurred as I reappeared behind Ren, sword slashing down with enough force to split the virtual ground beneath us. The impact roared through the arena, a shockwave of light and heat exploding outward, shattering the tiled floor into a spiderweb of cracks. Ren twisted at the last second, his arm raised, but the blow still caught his shoulder, carving a deep gash that sprayed virtual blood across the fractured tiles. He grunted, pain flashing across his face, but he didn't buckle. Instead, he retaliated with the first movement of his grade 6 art void fist, collapsing step. His foot slammed into the ground, and the space around him warped, a ripple of distorted gravity racing toward me. The air itself seemed to collapse inward, dragging me off balance with a force that could crush steel. My bone armor creaked under the pressure, shards of virtual stone pelting me as the arena groaned. I gritted my teeth, planting my sword into the ground to anchor myself. "Nice try," I muttered, then raised my hand. Time for a real spell. Golden sigils glowed along my arm as I channeled a 6-circle incantation, Radiant Cascade. Pure light coalesced into a barrage of searing beams, each one thick as my arm and screaming with heat. I unleashed it point blank, the light tearing through the air toward Ren. His eyes widened, but he didn't flinch. 6-circle spell, Graviton Vortex. His hands thrust forward, and a swirling maelstrom of gravity erupted, a black spiral that sucked in light and debris alike. My radiant cascade slammed into it, beams bending and fracturing as the vortex devoured them. The collision shook the VR world, the sky flickering with static as energy clashed. For a moment, it held, then the vortex buckled, and a stray beam punched through, grazing Ren's side. He hissed, clutching the wound, virtual smoke rising from the scorched fabric. I didn't let up. Tempest dance technique kicked in, my grade 5 art building momentum as I spun toward him, sort of blazing whirlwind. Each strike came faster, heavier, fire and light weaving a relentless assault. Ren blocked with his fists, gravity enhancing every parry, but I could feel him straining. The ground beneath us splintered further, chunks of stone hovering in the chaotic air. Then he shifted tactics. Second movement of grade 6 art void fist, Event Horizon. A dome of distorted space snapped into existence around him, the air thickening with oppressive weight. My sword slowed mid-swing, like I was cutting through tar, and the light around me dimmed, bent inward by the gravitational pull. Inside that field, Ren's aura surged, his fists glowing with void-black energy. He charged, his punches a blur of destruction. I dodged the first, god flash flickering me aside, but the second caught my chest. Bone armor absorbed most of it, but the impact still sent me skidding back, my boots carving trenches in the ruined floor. Pain throbbed through me, virtual or not, it felt real enough. Erebus. I snapped mentally. My lich responded, deep dark pooling at my feet. I thrust both hands forward, casting a six-circle spell, Abyssal Chains. Shadows erupted from the ground, thick tendrils of darkness tipped with jagged barbs. They lashed toward Ren, piercing his event horizon and wrapping around his arms and legs. The chains tightened, anchoring him in place, their weight dragging against his gravity field. Ren snarled, struggling. Not bad, Nightingale. His aura flared, and with a roar, he broke free, the chains shattering into wisps of shadow. But I'd already moved. God Flash carried me above him, sword raised high. I poured everything into the strike, fire, light, and sheer will, aiming to end it. He countered with his final card. Third movement of Grade 6 Art Void Fist, Void Collapse. The air imploded around him, a crushing sphere of gravity that devoured light and sound. My strike met it head-on, the collision a deafening boom that fractured the virtual world itself. The ground buckled, a crater forming beneath us, and the sky glitched, streaks of code flashing through the haze. I felt the pull, my body straining against the force, but I'd anticipated this. Tempest Dance surged one last time, momentum breaking me free of the collapse. I twisted midair, landing behind Ren as his spell faded. Before he could turn, my sword pressed against his throat, the edge drawing a thin line of blood. I exhaled before beheading him, eliminating him from the event. The virtual battlefield shimmered as Ren's avatar shattered into a cascade of light, the system chiming his elimination. My chest heaved, sword still buzzing in my hand from the duel's final clash. The energy blade's afterglow lingered in the air where his neck had been moments before, a clean, precise strike that had ended our rivalry, at least for this simulation. He was out, Ren, perpetually stuck at 9,900 points, gone from the competition. I stood alone on the fractured ground, glowing cracks spiderwebbing beneath my boots like veins of molten gold and obsidian. The destruction around me told the story of our battle, scorched earth, fractured pillars, the scattered remnants of his shadow wolves that had nearly flanked me twice. I tapped my wrist interface, pulling up the holographic leaderboard that hovered in translucent blue. 1. Seraphina, 12,500 points. 2. Jean, 11,800 points. 3. Arthur, 10,200 points. 4. Ren, 9,900 points, eliminated. Third place. My grip tightened on my sword until the simulation's haptic feedback pushed back against my fingers. The leaderboard confirmed what I already knew. I'd spent too long trapped in a duel when I should have been securing objectives. Dueling wasn't the point of the tactical simulation event. While I'd been locked in my grudge match with Ren, Seraphina and Jean were outpacing me, racking up points through territorial control and objective completion. This wasn't just about fighting skill, it was about strategy, resource management, troop deployment, control of the battle space. I'd been too narrow, too focused on the immediate threat rather than the bigger picture. Time to adapt or get left behind. I opened the tactical map with a gesture, the terrain spreading out before me in miniature. 3 primary targets glowed with opportunity, the western fortress standing sentinel over a rugged valley, the northern relay station nestled between twin mountains, and the southern vault buried partially underground. Each represented a substantial point haul, but they were fortresses in their own right, NPC guards with advanced combat AI, automated turrets with predictive targeting, and rival players circling like vultures, waiting for someone else to weaken the defenses before swooping in. My troops were in rough shape, their armor dented from the last skirmish, morale indicators hovering at 65%, energy reserves depleted from covering my flanks during the duel with Ren. Going solo against any of the major targets would be suicide with Jean and Seraphina still in play. I needed a plan, and fast. Arthur. Central Ridge. Now. Serafina's voice snapped through my comms, cool and firm as it always was during combat. Her icon pulsed on the map, holding the northern sector with her Frost Elites, specialized units that had earned her a reputation for locking down entire regions with ice barriers and cryogenic traps. I smirked. She wasn't just my girlfriend in the real world, she was my lifeline in this simulation. On my way, I responded, ordering my remaining soldiers to hold defensive positions as I sprinted across the glowing terrain. Jagged cliffs rose like teeth into a blood-red sky, the simulation's environment reflecting the intensifying competition as we approached endgame. The ground beneath my feet changed from cracked obsidian to luminescent crystal, each step sending ripples of light outward like disturbed water. She waited atop the ridge, silver hair catching the crimson light of the virtual sun, her frost-armored figure cutting a sharp silhouette against the sky. Her ethereal elven face was all business, but her eyes softened when they met mine, a quiet care slipping through her icy front, visible only to someone who knew where to look. "You're slipping," she said, voice edged with concern. "Third doesn't suit you." I crossed my arms, the simulation perfectly rendering my defensive posture. "You here to drag me up out of pity?" "That's not like you, Sarah." A faint smile broke her composed facade. "Not pity. A promise." She stepped closer, her tone dropping so the system wouldn't relay it to other competitors. "I told you I'd be your first. So I'm here to get the lead." Her words hit deep, echoing a night in the real world when she'd whispered that vow, her hand in mine, moonlight spilling across her face. She wasn't just my partner here, she was my anchor in both realities. "You've already got that title," I said, the corner of my mouth lifting. "Let's make the system agree." "Deal." Her smile vanished, replaced by tactical focus, the transition seamless. The Western Fortress. It's a monster, 3-layered gates, elite NPC guards, turrets with overlapping fields of fire, but the points will vault you past Jean and me. We take it together. My elites, your troops. You claim it. I pulled up the fortress on the map, a jagged stronghold perched on a cliff edge, surrounded by a shimmering force field that indicated its high-value status. Jin's undead scouts prowled nearby, bone-white markers circling the approach. He'd move on it soon if we delayed. The defenses were brutal, but with Serafina's frost units complementing my more balanced force, it was doable. "Smart," I said. "We hit it fast, before Jean consolidates." We regrouped at the cliff's base, our forces blending, my battle-scarred soldiers with their adaptive armor beside her Frost Elites, their icy plating glinting with arcane energy. The fortress towered above, its shadow heavy across the valley floor. Jin's scouts snarled in the distance, their bone-white forms shifting between patches of shadow. I raised a hand, feeling the weight of command. "Serafina, crack the gates. I'll lead the push once we're through." She nodded, her blade flaring with frost energy that crystallized the air around it. "Move." Her elites unleashed a coordinated storm of ice, the temperature around the massive gates plummeting until the metal itself became brittle. I charged, my troops following in perfect formation, smashing through the now weakened entrance. The sound of fracturing metal echoed across the valley as we burst inside. The interior was a death trap. NPC guards lunged from defensive positions, their spears flashing with energy, wall-mounted turrets spitting concentrated plasma. I dodged a bolt that would have removed my avatar's head, my sword slicing through a guard's chest plate, my mind racing through variables. Left flanks thin, turrets prioritize targets at maximum range, guards focus on highest threat value. Time to shift the battlefield. "Spread out." I yelled, the command indicators flashing above my troops. "Pull their fire in multiple directions." It worked. My soldiers fanned out across the courtyard, drawing aggro from different defense systems, while Serafina's elites cut deeper into the fortress's core. The simulation registered the effectiveness of the tactic, NPC defenses faltering as they struggled to prioritize targets. Then Jean hit. His undead horde burst from the shadows where they'd been gathering strength, skeletal warriors and rotting hulks slamming into our flank. I spun, sword blazing with energy, carving through 3 attackers in a single sweep. Hold the line. I shouted, repositioning to stall his advance. Arthur, the core. Seraphina's voice cut through the chaos of battle. I saw it, a glowing orb at the fortress's center, wrapped in a pulsing dark shield. This was the capture point, the objective worth thousands of simulation points. Jean dropped from a higher level, his twin short swords whirling with dark mana, his voice a low hiss. Too late, Nightingale. He lunged at me, blades aimed for vital points. I parried the first strike, metal screaming against metal, shoving him off balance, then countered with a diagonal slash. He dodged with unnatural speed, summoning more undead from the ground itself, their bony claws scraping at my legs. Seraphina! I called, weaving through the mass of enemies. Pin him down. She was there in a heartbeat, her frost blade clashing with Jin's short swords, ice energy meeting dark power in a spectacular collision that the simulation rendered as a shockwave of color. I seized the opening, charging the barrier that protected the core, pure light energy igniting along my sword's edge. One strike, two, three, the shield cracked, fracture lines spreading like a spider's web, then shattered completely. I grabbed the core, feeling the simulation register the capture as my points spiked dramatically. 1. Arthur, 15,000 points. 2. Jean, 13,200 points. 3. Seraphina, 12,800 points. 4. Ren, 9,900 points, eliminated. And Jean, I said, locking eyes with Seraphina across the battlefield. I'll take the lead for both of us. She nodded, diving back into combat with Jean, her frost elites forming a barrier between him and the exit. I activated a tactical teleport, the simulation blurring around me as I relocated to the final arena, a massive, scarred field with ancient pillars ringing its circumference, a massive crystal pulsing at its heart. The ultimate objective was guarded by a titan, a colossal construct of stone and crackling energy, its eyes tracking my arrival. Jean arrived moments later, his remaining undead trailing behind him like a tattered shadow, but no sign of Ren, just as it should be. His elimination was permanent for this round. Minions are yours, I told my troops, the command indicators flashing confirmation. I've got the Titan. I rushed forward, dodging a devastating fist that cratered the ground where I'd stood, teleporting with God Flash to flank the massive construct. My sword chipped away at its stone legs, slow its mobility first, then disable its arms, control the fight's pace. Jean joined the assault, his dark spells gnawing at the Titan's core, our moves sinking despite the rivalry. The Titan's defenses were formidable, its programming adaptive, but between my precision strikes and Jin's area damage, we made steady progress. It swung again, a massive arm sweeping across the arena, but I slid beneath it, dragging my blade along its underside where the armor was thinnest. The Titan buckled under my radiant cascade, a series of pinpoint strikes to critical junctions, and Jin's dark magic that corroded its structural integrity. It collapsed in a heap of stone and dissipating energy, the simulation registering its defeat with a thunderous boom. The crystal at the arena's center gleamed with promise, no longer protected. We sprinted toward it simultaneously, our hands slamming against its surface together. The simulation froze, time suspended as the final scores calculated and flashed across our vision. 1. Arthur, 18,000 points. 2. Jean, 16,500 points. 3. Seraphina, 15,200 points. 4. Ren, 9,900 points, eliminated. I stepped from the simulation pod, the real world rushing back in a wave of sensory input. My pulse gradually slowed as the adrenaline of virtual combat faded. The training center hummed with activity around us, other cadets analyzing their performances, instructors making notes, maintenance drones checking the pods for mechanical issues. Seraphina emerged from her pod nearby, her cool mask of professionalism lifting with a hint of pride when our eyes met. Jean glared from across the room, silent in his defeat but already calculating his next approach. I could see it in the way his fingers twitched, mentally reviewing the simulation's key moments. Seraphina walked over, her steps measured, voice soft enough that only I could hear. You won. I kept my word. I grinned, running a hand through my hair, still damp from the pod's neural interface. Wouldn't have without you. Chapter 339, Crown Challenge, 1. With the conclusion of the tactical simulation earlier that evening, we'd been given barely enough time to shower and change into our formal academy uniforms before being summoned to the Grand Hall. The Grand Hall buzzed with a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation as the final rankings were revealed, etched in glowing letters on a massive holographic screen. These rankings determined the Elite 20 who would advance to the Crown Challenge, a legendary trial that promised to crown the festival's ultimate victor. I tugged at my collar, still damp from the hasty shower I'd managed between the simulation pods and this ceremony. The smell of the cleaning agents used on our uniforms mingled with cologne, perfume, and the lingering scent of adrenaline that seemed to follow us everywhere during festival week. I scanned the rankings, my name glowing in third position. 1. Jack Blaze Spout. 2. Lucifer Windward. 3. Arthur Nightingale. 4. Siola Moyong. 5. Rachel Creighton. 6. Ren Kagu. 7. Cecilia Slatemark. 8. Naomi Draven. 9. Rose Springshaper. 10. Aaron Myriott. 11. Ava Peng. 12. Arya Gu. 13. Tobias Grimfeld. 14. Serafina Zenith. 15. Elara Astoria. 16. Clana Lopez. 17. Leora Arundel. 18. Ian Vizirian. 19. Jean Ashbluff. 20. Luke Orden. 3rd. Not bad, but not enough. Jack and Lucifer had edged me out, Jack with his unpredictable flame techniques that had dominated the arena combat event, Lucifer with his perfect score in the knowledge trial. I felt the familiar burn of determination in my chest. The Crown Challenge was where it would truly matter. Rachel approached, her uniform perfectly pressed, a soft smile gracing her lips. 3rd place, she said, bumping my shoulder with hers. Should I be impressed or disappointed? Despite her teasing, there was warmth in her eyes that was reserved for our private moments. Save your judgment until after the Crown Challenge, I replied, returning her smile with one of my own. 5th isn't bad yourself. She laughed, tucking a strand of golden hair behind her ear. Just close enough to keep you looking over your shoulder. Exactly where I want to be. Her expression softened momentarily. This is going to change things, isn't it? All of us competing directly against each other. Before I could answer, Cecilia joined us, her uniform immaculate as always. The tactical display on her wrist contrasted sharply with the formal uniform, a small concession to practicality that the proctors allowed. Analyzing your competition, Rachel, she asked, her voice carrying its usual precise tone, though her eyes held a familiar affection when they turned to me. Or just staking your claim? Both, Rachel replied with a grin. Though I think all 4 of us established our claims a while ago. Cecilia raised an eyebrow. And yet here we stand, ranked separately, about to face the Crown Challenge. Speaking of which, Rose's voice came from behind as she approached our group. Unlike the rest of us, her uniform had that deliberately casual look, top button undone, tie slightly loose, that somehow made her stand out more than those who followed regulations to the letter. Anyone else notice Serafina sacrificed her standing to boost Arthur in the tactical simulation? All eyes turned to where Serafina stood a short distance away, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun, the uniformity of her appearance only making her natural elegance more striking. As if sensing our attention, she looked over, nodded once, and began walking toward us. Strategy, Cecilia said simply. She's playing a longer game. Aren't we all? Rachel murmured, her hand briefly brushing mine before she stepped back to make room in our circle for Serafina. Congratulations to all of you, Serafina said as she joined us, her cool composure a counterpoint to Rachel's fiery intensity. Though she addressed the group, her eyes lingered on me with an intensity that communicated volumes. Particularly Arthur. 3rd is an excellent position from which to launch your final assault. A hushed silence fell over the hall as Vice Headmaster Valerie von Lampez strode onto the central platform. Unlike the students in our formal blues, she wore a striking uniform of deep crimson, the color reserved for the highest-ranking instructors at Mythos. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, eyes scanning the room with precision. "Congratulations to our 20 finalists," she announced, her voice carrying throughout the hall. "You've fought, you've strategized, you've demonstrated your abilities across 5 preliminary events. Now comes the true test." The holographic display behind her shifted, revealing not a map but a single object rotating slowly in the air, a magnificent crown crafted of materials that seemed to both absorb and emit light, its 7 spires reaching upward like flames frozen in time. "The Crown Challenge," Valerie continued, "has evolved over generations, but its purpose remains unchanged, to identify not just skill, but worthiness. The crown itself decides its bearer." The hologram zoomed in, revealing intricate patterns etched into the crown's surface. Each spire represents one of the 7 virtues the crown seeks: courage, wisdom, resilience, vision, harmony, conviction, and sacrifice. Throughout the challenge, the crown will respond to your actions, your decisions, your very character. She gestured, and the hologram expanded to show a vast, circular arena divided into 7 equal sections, each bearing the symbol of one of the virtues. You will enter the crown arena simultaneously. Within, you will face trials embodying each virtue. These are not simple combat scenarios, they will test the totality of who you are. Your decisions matter more than your power. Her gaze swept across our gathered faces, analyzing, calculating. The crown arena shifts and responds to your collective presence. No 2 challenges are identical. What remains constant is this: only 3 can reach the heart of the crown, where the final judgment occurs. Rachel shifted beside me, her shoulder pressing against mine momentarily, a subtle gesture of support that didn't escape the notice of Cecilia, whose eyes narrowed slightly, or Rose, who smirked knowingly. "You will each wear a crown shard," Valerie continued, holding up a small fragment that seemed to be made of the same material as the crown itself. "It will resonate with your actions throughout the challenge. If you are incapacitated or choose to withdraw, simply crush the shard. Be advised, once you exit, there is no return." The hologram shifted again, focusing on the center of the arena. She paused, then added with clear purpose, "The crown is more than a symbol. It resonates with its chosen bearer, enhancing their natural talents and abilities for a full month following the challenge and acting as a rare booster of talent even for integration rankers. The advantages this provides in your future endeavors should be obvious. Choose your path wisely." The implications were immediate and electric. This wasn't just about prestige or academy standing, the crown offered real power and advantage. I felt the tension in the room shift, sharpening into something more calculated. Alliances that might have formed out of convenience would now be weighed against the potential cost. "You have 4 hours to rest and prepare," Valerie announced. "The challenge begins promptly at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Use this time wisely." As we were dismissed, Serafina caught my eye across the crowd. She gave me a slight nod. Our plan to work together, at least initially, still stood. Rose approached from my left, loosening her tie further with one finger. "So it's business now," she said quietly. "I wouldn't mind seeing you take that crown, but I'm not handing it to you." "I wouldn't expect you to," I replied honestly. Rachel appeared at my other side, close enough that our arms brushed. "We should talk strategy before this starts," she said, her voice pitched low. "All of us. There's more than one way to approach this." "Agreed," Cecilia said, joining our impromptu circle. "The observation deck in 30 minutes. We need to analyze what we know about the challenge before making any decisions." As our group dispersed to prepare, I lingered, studying the holographic crown one last time. Its 7 spires seemed to pulse with possibility. I could almost feel the weight of it, the power it would bring. 3rd place was respectable. But I hadn't come here to be respectable. I'd come to win. Chapter 340, Crown Challenge, 2. I didn't expect everyone to be interested in this, Valerie said as she looked across the VVIP room, her crimson uniform standing out against the opulent surroundings. The observation chamber was suspended high above the arena, its walls constructed of one-way transparency material that offered an unobstructed view of the preparation area below. Plush chairs were arranged in tiered rows, each bearing the insignia of a major academy or continental power. Crystal decanters of rare spirits sat untouched on side tables, the gathering too focused on the spectacle about to unfold for such distractions. Well, the winner for the Upper Years in Tur Academy Festival is obvious anyway, Leon Vizirian from the southern continent who came with Serpentstone Academy said as he yawned, stretching his tall frame. His dark green robes, embroidered with the silver serpent of his academy, rustled with the movement. Despite his affected boredom, his sharp eyes never left the display showing the 20 finalists' rankings. I am much more curious about this one, especially due to the extra amount of talent. The air in the room hummed with barely contained power. These weren't merely spectators but immortal rankers, individuals whose accomplishments had earned them the right to sit in judgment of the next generation. Their presence created an almost palpable pressure, the atmosphere dense with competing energies that seemed to test each other's boundaries. Those three are going to dominate, Lilith Windward, Lucifer's cousin sister and part of the Windward family who came with the Pillon Academy from the northern continent, said. She absently twisted a strand of platinum blonde hair around her finger, the strands seemingly catching light from within. Her white and gold uniform remained pristine despite the long journey south. Arthur Nightingale already showed the difference against Renkagu in the tactical simulation event. Holographic displays hovered throughout the room, replaying highlights from the preliminary events. Arthur's decisive victory over Ren played in silent loop near the center of the chamber, drawing occasional glances from the gathered dignitaries. It is going to be interesting, Jaehyun Namgung who came with the Starcrest Academy from the eastern continent said. Unlike the others who projected their status overtly, Jaehyun's presence was understated yet unmistakable. His traditional indigo robes bore no ornamentation, but the air around him seemed to shimmer slightly, as if reality itself respected his power enough to give him space. I wasn't expecting the Grand Marshal of the Western Continent herself to come though, Valerie said as she turned towards Maylin Potton, a woman whose military bearing was evident in every precise movement. The medals adorning her formal uniform told stories of battles won and enemies vanquished, each one earned through blood and sacrifice. I am here to see his performance, that is all, Maylin said simply, her gaze never wavering from the screens tracking the students' preparations. The light caught on the scar that ran from her temple to her jaw, a reminder of some past confrontation that she had survived but never forgotten. But I am more surprised that you are here, she said as her dark eyes turned to one man whose presence dominated the room full to the brim with powerful immortal rankers. Magnus sat apart from the others, requiring no posturing to establish his significance. His very stillness commanded attention, the casual way he occupied his space suggesting that the world arranged itself around him rather than the reverse. The faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth held secrets that had shaped empires. It's been a while, Maylin, Magnus greeted her, his voice carrying easily despite its conversational tone. I heard you met the Axe King. How was his axe? The question sent a ripple of tension through the room. Even among these legends, the mention of the Axe King caused several to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Too powerful for me, Maylin responded simply as she crossed her arms, the admission causing subtle reactions among those close enough to hear. For someone of her caliber to acknowledge such inferiority was rare enough to merit notice. Why are you here? Same reason as you, Magnus shrugged his shoulders, the casual gesture somehow making his expensive tailored suit settle more perfectly across his broad shoulders. But I too am surprised, to think I would get to see someone like you here. His gray eyes, clear as winter skies and just as cold, turned towards a man wearing a long black coat despite sitting indoors with an old 19th century black hat covering his features. The man sat unnaturally still, as if conserving every ounce of energy. Though his face remained shadowed, the others in the room gave him a wide berth unconsciously, instinct warning them away more effectively than any overt threat. His Majesty wished for Her Highness's safety, the man replied simply, not saying anything further. Yet every word spoken out of his mouth was robotic beyond compare, as if he was someone who already shed all feelings. His gloved hands rested motionless on his knees, the leather worn smooth from use that no one present wished to contemplate. For the safety of his daughter, he sent someone like you? Magnus scoffed, his voice carrying an edge that made the crystal glasses on the nearby table vibrate slightly. He leaned forward, the expensive fabric of his tailored suit stretching across broad shoulders that had carried the weight of countless decisions. Is he trying to start a war or something? The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The other immortal rankers shifted in their seats, some subtly creating distance between themselves and the confrontation unfolding before them. Lilith Windward's fingers froze mid-twist in her platinum hair, her eyes widening at Magnus' boldness. Be careful of your words towards His Majesty Martial King, the man warned, his voice devoid of inflection yet somehow all the more menacing for its emptiness. His gloved fingers remained motionless on his knees, but a subtle darkness gathered around the brim of his hat, as if shadows themselves were responding to his displeasure. The warning was delivered with the casual certainty of someone unaccustomed to being disobeyed, uncaring for the identity of the person the warning was thrown at. A charged silence followed. Leon Vizirian's affected boredom vanished, replaced by the alert tension of a predator recognizing another of its kind. Jaehyun Namgung's traditional robes rustled as he shifted almost imperceptibly, his eyes measuring the distance between the two men as if calculating the radius of potential destruction. Magnus didn't seem to care much either, his gray eyes reflecting nothing but cold amusement. I wouldn't mind seeing the power of the commander of Nighthawks. He drawled, one finger idly tracing the rim of an untouched glass of amber liquid, but you need to be prepared to die for that. His threat dropped in the air like a stone into still water, ripples of tension expanding outward to touch everyone present. Several of the lesser immortal rankers found sudden interest in the holographic displays, their faces carefully blank. The man in the coat remained motionless, the shadow beneath his hat revealing nothing, not responding despite the threat. Maylin Potton's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the ornate hilt at her waist, her scarred face tight with anticipation. Valerie shot her a warning glance, aware that her VVIP observation room could become a battlefield in moments if these titans decided to clash. I am just joking, don't take it so hard, Magnus said as he turned his gaze away, his sudden smile never reaching his eyes. His posture relaxed deliberately, a performance for the room rather than a genuine easing of tension. I don't want to spill blood when I came here for something else. The collective breath that had been held by everyone present released slowly, though the wariness remained. The commander of the Nighthawks hadn't moved throughout the exchange, his stillness somehow more alarming than any display of power would have been. Are you interested in Arthur Nightingale as well? Maylin said, her tactical mind shifting the conversation to safer ground. The medals on her uniform caught the light as she crossed her arms, her piercing gaze assessing Magnus with military precision. Who isn't? Magnus replied, gesturing toward the main display where Arthur's profile was prominently featured. The hologram highlighted his combat statistics, a series of numbers that told only part of the story of his potential. He is a talent I am going to nurture. A ripple of surprise spread throughout the room. Several heads turned sharply, the implications of Magnus' statement too significant to ignore. Jaehyun Namgung's eyes narrowed thoughtfully, while Leon Vizirian abandoned all pretense of disinterest, sitting forward in his seat. The Martial King was the current paragon and thus the strongest person in the world as he was the only one at mid-radiant rank. Valerie's dark eyes flicked between Magnus and the commander, calculating the new tensions that would inevitably affect her students. The room that had seemed spacious moments before now felt claustrophobic, compressed by the weight of ambition and power politics being played out with a young man's future as the prize.